across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, very good afternoon to you. Just after 1 o'clock on Monday, August the 17th. David Bull in for Ian Collins. Week 2. Thank you very much indeed for joining me this afternoon. Last week was absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much for all your calls, text messages. Let's do it all again this week as well. Let's look at the headlines making the news this hour. Well, Reform UK has vowed to force long-term welfare claimants into 20 hours a week of community work, with Robert Jenrick unveiling Alarm Clock Britain plans targeting anyone out of work for over 12 months. Britain's new £400 million super prison, HMP Millsike, has almost 350 cells sitting empty because it cannot recruit enough staff, despite chronic overcrowding elsewhere in the system. And cancer patients are facing delayed treatment after GPs revealed only over a quarter of their referrals were rejected, including some flagged for red flag cancer symptoms. And those are the top stories making the news. We'll go through all of those in just a moment. Well, a very good afternoon to you. Some very punchy claims by Reform UK at their press conference earlier on this morning. If you missed this, they are talking about the welfare bill, which is some £333 billion. They reckon they can save £50 billion a year. It's a really intriguing set of policies. Now, the question I have is the Reform's welfare crackdown, is it a vote winner or is it a vote loser? The number 0344 499 1000. You can text the word talk in your message to 87222. You can also message us on X as well at talkTV. You can WhatsApp us as well. Well, joining me this afternoon is Emma Trimble, Senior Fellow at the New Culture Forum. Good afternoon to you.
Good to be with you, David.
Yeah, really nice to see you. It's been a while, hasn't it? 14 months or thereabouts, I think.
More, I think. More.
Is it more? Is it more? Well, I hope you're very well. Should we talk about Reform? I mean, this is very interesting. Obviously, I have no official role within Reform UK. I was involved and I had no foresight of what they were going to announce, apart from when I read it in the Sunday papers yesterday. And we had a sort of tantalising tease of what Robert Jenrick was going to announce. Now, a Reform UK government would introduce the biggest welfare shake-up in a generation by scrapping key benefits to save a walloping £50 billion a year. This is according to Robert Jenrick. He wrote, as I said yesterday in the papers, saying the current system was akin to suicidal empathy and not helping those it was designed for. Now, yesterday, we learnt a number of key measures. He said Reform would abolish personal independence payments, those are PIP, and also the health element of universal credit for working-age adults as part of a package of reforms that would remove or cut benefits for an astounding 2.89 million people. He then said, well, PIP would then be replaced with a health security allowance for severe and enduring disability cases. He said only those with severe disabilities would get cash support, with remaining claimants provided with necessary services and support through council-run disability support accounts. Now, there was another part to this as well yesterday, and I was thinking about this overnight. Also, under this system, employers would also have to pay for a new type of insurance called return to work cover, which would cover the cost of the first 2 years after an employee signed off sick. Now, that would only apply if you have 5 or more employees. So, Emma, let's just start with what was revealed yesterday. There's a lot more detail to this as well. What are your thoughts on, certainly, I mean, I was surprised that he decided to tackle welfare this far out from an election. It's either a massive vote winner or a massive vote loser. I don't think it sits in the middle.
It's certainly a gamble. Welfare is never going to be something that is politically easy to tackle, particularly if you're looking to win votes from people who might be on welfare. But I think that across the board, I think the British public, unless you are of the left, can agree that we need to do something about the benefit system, because we have a record number of people who are claiming benefits. The benefits bill is 333 billion, and the majority of that is people that are on sick benefits. 4 million claiming disability benefits. And we hear stories all the time of people who are on these benefits because they have ADHD, because they have anxiety. And clearly, this is a luxury. The state can't afford to be paying this much money in taxpayers' money. It's not only not good for the country financially and not sustainable, it's also not good for those people that it's trapping in work. There is a certain dignity in work. We're living at a time when it's easier than ever to work if you have to be flexible because you can work from home. And so I think what Reform are trying to do here is to streamline the process and to try and cut that bill. And as with other policies, they're thinking creatively. They're thinking outside of the box. But I must say, I do need to be convinced about the insurance scheme that they're proposing for employers. I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, I mean, that's really interesting. And they've said we will actually reduce your national insurance employer contributions as a result if you then have that insurance by something like, wait for this, 0.2%. Now, I don't think that's high enough to ensure that the employers actually go along with that. However, that being said, they've also said they will actually remove that uplift in employers' national insurance, which, as you remember, with the Labour government went from 13.8% up to 15%. But when you talk about that bill of £333 billion, it's set to rise by £74 billion on top of that to £406 billion in just 4 years' time. I mean, any government just simply cannot ignore this walloping great fat elephant in the room.
It's the stuff of bankruptcy, and it can't go on, and it requires political bravery to be able to deal with it. And I think, some of the suggestions that have been made by the Conservative Party are also really good. I'm not in favour of what we've seen, this kind of sniping on the right, with the Conservatives criticising Reform for this, because Kemi Badenoch has, she has proposed, and actually Reform then criticising the Conservatives. I think Robert Jenrick said that their policy was like something that had been worked up on the back of a fag packet. I think that what they're proposing of cutting benefits and cutting social housing for non-British nationals is a fantastic idea, and that both parties have good proposals, and we do have to do something about it, because what you're describing there and the projected rise in the welfare bill is the stuff of bankruptcy. We simply cannot afford it. And the thing that worries me about this insurance idea for businesses is that even if they're suggesting that this would be cost neutral with it being offset by a reduction in national insurance payments, the consequence of that for business is yet more of a bureaucratic burden, and companies just cannot manage this. And this is the mistake that the Labour Party are making.
Well, I think you're right. And also, I think those SMEs, the small companies, will then think, is it worth us going to have 5 employees? Let's stick at 4. Also, if you're a director of the company, do you qualify as an employee? Probably not. So have 3 directors and 4 staff. Therefore, you don't actually come under that net.
Precisely. I think if we want the economy to grow, then we have to loosen all the red tape on businesses and just allow them to get on with what they're doing. A company of 5 employees is still very small, and to put this extra added burden on them, I think, is just going to run the economy further into the ground. Now, we don't have all the details on this policy yet, so maybe it is a good idea. I'm open to being convinced. I'm just a little bit reluctant towards any policy that puts any more burden on business. But what Reform is saying is that this is similar to an approach that was used in the Netherlands, and that actually reduced applications for disability benefit by 40%. So maybe it will work, but I think we need to be very careful about not putting any burdens on business.
I mean, there is one other very eye-catching part to this policy. More than 1 million foreigners living in Britain would be banned from claiming almost all benefits. Any EU citizen with settled status would basically lose access to all benefits. That would require a renegotiation of the Brexit deal with Brussels. Here we go again. And also, then it would trigger a reciprocal move by the EU, by European member states, against British citizens living in foreign parts. So, again, this is just going to open old wounds yet again. It may be the right thing to do, but also you're picking a massive fight.
Politically difficult, but financially necessary. And also, I think when it comes to foreign nationals who are claiming benefits in the UK, whether it's straightforward benefits or whether it's through social housing, there is an injustice to that. And I think that many of the British public, probably the majority, I would suspect, feel that that is unjust and that people who are not UK citizens shouldn't be entitled to benefits. They shouldn't be propped up in the country by the taxpayer. And I think that's also true, by the way, of Brits abroad. If I were living abroad and I needed to rely on social welfare there, I would say I have no right to be there and I ought to leave and go home. If I to Spain and I need to be dependent on the Spanish taxpayer, that is unjust. I must leave.
Well, quite. It's interesting because Reform has often been accused of making up policies literally on the back of an envelope. This one, very different. 6 months of work by a team of people just reading this. Included people who work with Siri and Duncan Smith on developing universal credit as well. So clearly a lot of work going into this. There was another very, very big statement which I heard this morning at that press conference, and my mouth dropped open, which is the long-term unemployed would face 20 hours of mandatory community service, i.e. you're out of work for a long time, you can't get a job, you've applied, and the government will make you go and pick up litter, make sure that the local areas are clean and tidy. Crikey, I haven't seen anything like that. Good idea?
If you're able to physically work and you're claiming benefits and being propped up by the taxpayer, then I don't see any reason why you shouldn't work for that money. I think what we're seeing here with Reform, this, as you mentioned, this is a proper policy paper, and it's not the first of its kind. Reform are doing things differently to the way that parties have done in the past, and also, there might be a political cost to doing this so far in advance of the next general election, although we don't really know when that will be. But the reality is that unlike other parties, they are making it very, very clear where they stand and thinking these things through in great detail before getting to the next general election, so people can really digest all of their policies, that they can see how people respond to those policies. And as you say, they've got people working on this who work with Ian Duncan Smith on universal credit. They've got people working on this who are whistleblowers from the civil service. This is a substantial piece of work. And the other way in which they are doing things differently to other parties is that they are being extremely creative, whether it comes to the question of whether you house prisoners in El Salvador, when it comes to the push the boats back policy. We need to be thinking about what is necessary, even if it is politically difficult. If that means having a row with the European Union, or whether that means having a row with France, it might be politically difficult, but it might be necessary, and it might also be not only financially necessary, but necessary for justice and fairness.
Right, let's move on and talk about our prison crisis. 88,000 prison places in this country. 10,000 of those are made up of foreign nationals. Shabana Mahmood trying to deport people. We spent a lot of time last week talking about the early release scheme. It now transpires, according to the Telegraph this morning, that Britain's newest super prison, which cost, by the way, 400 million quid, has hundreds, literally hundreds of empty cells sitting there because it cannot recruit enough staff. This is HMP Millsite near York. It started taking inmates in March of last year. Its capacity is 1,500. It has 350 cells empty, and essentially, according to the Ministry of Justice, they're saying, well, look, we are recruiting people, we're training those people, they become really good at what they do, and then they leave. This is a major problem. We also talked about the fact that with the early release scheme, they said, well, we can't keep the killers of PC Andrew Harper in prison because then you'd have to make a blanket ban for all of those people convicted of manslaughter, but there are only 470. Here, 350 cells would solve most of that problem.
Yeah, this is crazy. And it's only come out because Andy Burnham has instructed Alex Norris, the Justice Secretary, to find a way of keeping PC Harper's killers in prison. Otherwise, we probably wouldn't know that actually there are prison spaces available. This is an absurd situation. I think Jacob Rees-Mogg was right when he basically said that, the Labour government were misleading the public about the new Sentencing Act, because that is a change to the justice system as a whole. It's not a response to an emergency situation in our prisons with a lack of prison spaces. And like you say, over 300, almost 400 empty spaces that in this prison that cost so much to build. And it's because they can't get the staff in order to run it. I mean, this is a crazy, crazy situation. And it's not only that, it's that there are 4,000 prison spaces in the old Victorian prisons that are not being used because they're currently under maintenance. So I don't think that this this early release scheme is actually about an emergency situation in our prisons. I think that it's to do with overhauling the prison system, the justice system, in the long term, and we need to call the government out on that.
Can I just ask you for your response? The Prime Minister said in an article for The Telegraph, this is last week, he had pushed to the very limits of what is possible to do by preventing 1,000 rapists and child sex groomers from being let out early. Later on, the same week, he then said it was incumbent on him to do everything within his power. These seem like false words, empty promises to me.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm not convinced at all that the Labour government, you know, are taking the concerns of the British public seriously. I think that the left in general have a very different approach to justice compared to not the right, but you know, the common sense view of most citizens, which view prison as a necessary deterrent and also, importantly, as a punishment. I mean, even if we're looking at this prison that has been built near York, the one that has the free spaces available, you read about this place, it sounds like a luxury hotel.
Well, it does.
There are all sorts of amazing facilities. It looks a little bit like a very posh sixth form college. They have barista courses and all sorts. So,
well, they can grow vegetables and flowers. They have a multi-use games area. They've got gym equipment, 16 training workshops. They can learn bricklaying, carpentry, waste management, being a barista or a barber. But I might argue with you and say this is great because it means they can be integrated back into society once they've done their time.
It is a good idea for prisoners to be rehabilitated if they can be rehabilitated. And there are some prisoners, obviously, who are beyond the pale and just simply can't be. But you also need prison to be a punishment. And if prison is such a lovely place where you get to go and you learn all of these skills, you're hardly disincentivizing people from being arrested. And particularly, I mean, the fact that this Sentencing Act has basically decriminalized anything that would get a sentence of less than 1 year. I mean, this is a recipe for increasing the crime rate, for endangering the British public. I personally think it's reckless.
Emma, thank you very much for the moment. Sorry, I've got to jump in, go to a break. We'll continue after this short break.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. This is Talk 122. David Bull in for Ian Collins. I'm joined by Emma Trimble. Let's talk, Emma, now, if we can, about this big story in The Sun today. Mega dinghies. We talked about it all last week. One dinghy carrying some 230 migrants or thereabouts. Well, it now transpires that mega dinghies from China are being shipped through Britain before criminal gangs pack them with migrants to cross the channel. So essentially, the boats, these lethal rubber boats, are being sent to mainland Europe so smuggling bosses can earn thousands of pounds. These shipping containers from China seem to come into Felixstowe because it's the largest container port in this country, and it's often the first European destination because that's where they come from China. They're then shipped back to Europe, packed with migrants and sent back to the United Kingdom.
Well, there are various aspects of this. I mean, the first obvious thing is that this puts a lot of control, actually, in the hands of enforcement in this country. A lot of these dinghies are coming from China, and Felixstowe is the first point of entry for those containers into Europe. We should be making sure that everything from China is checked so that these things are not going through. Now, obviously, it's a good thing that they managed to find this particular container. They've also apparently they've been working between the German law enforcement and the National Crime Agency have found these go kits where it's almost a sort of ready to go flat pack style product where you have the boat, the engine, the pump, the fuel, all of it ready to go so that it can just be taken to Germany and then shipped out to the people smugglers. They also found in Dusseldorf a similar bunch of equipment of this kind. I mean, we shouldn't be calling these really mega dinghies because even though they might be inflatable, they are just large boats, actually. And I think it's interesting, particularly after, we saw how the Labour government, Keir Starmer in particular, was cozying up to Xi Jinping. Most companies in China, large companies, end up under the control of the CCP, and the lines are very blurred between business and government in China. We know that foreign states are using migratory flows against us. There was a story only a couple of days ago about China's influence in pro-Palestine marches. I would be interested to know whether there's any complicity of the Chinese state in this.
Let's move on and talk about another big hot topic, which is about North Sea gas. Now, Andy Burnham, this really annoyed me when I read it this morning, actually. Andy Burnham is minded to approve the substantial Jackdaw gas field in the North Sea. So we know that Jackdaw and Rosebank, these are up for grabs. The consultation has now finished, and now the Prime Minister and the government have to decide whether they're going to open up those licences for drilling of oil and gas. This annoys me because, yet again, this is floating the idea in the national media to gauge public opinion. Why don't you actually have a fixed position? Why don't you actually have a clear idea of where you want to go as a government and enact it?
Yeah, I think they're worried about campaigners potentially legally challenging it if they do approve drilling. It's because, from their perspective on the left, it's politically difficult. But when you look at the facts, just from a common sense perspective, it's a total no-brainer. I mean, not only would this increase, just one of them, Jackdaw, would increase our energy supply in the UK by 6% because of the oil that it would be producing and directly pumping into our pipelines. But it's a diplomatic issue because the companies that are working on these two projects, Jackdaw and Rosebank, is co-owned by a company that is affiliated with or owned by the Norwegian government, the sort of national Norwegian oil and gas company, I think it is. And they obviously want, they've put billions into this, and they obviously, are looking for us to approve Rosebank in particular. Jackdaw looks like it might be approved, but Rosebank not so much. So, you know, this is a diplomatic point. It's a point about our energy security. It would also create all sorts of jobs in industry. It would be good for the economy. They would raise so much revenue in tax. It is totally a no-brainer on every single point. The only disadvantage that the Labour Party in particular would have is the political difficulty of getting the left of their own party on board with drilling in the North Sea because of all of their stupid net zero policy.
Well, that's right. And of course, the cost of net zero, £800 billion. Surely it's time to show leadership, is it not? When you look at Jackdaw, this is a tieback operation. Essentially, that means that when you reopen those taps, it goes straight into the national infrastructure. As you say, it's a no-brainer.
It's completely a no-brainer. And I mean, on Rosebank, it's a tieback when it comes to gas. But I think, and I am not a specialist in this, when it comes to gas, but not when it comes to oil. So the oil would be taken and put in a tanker and stored there. But this would still be good for the economy. And in terms of the oil production, the gas production, it would still be a tieback, as you described it. It would still be, you know, going straight into the UK's pipelines. This is sort of in a increasingly geopolitical febrile situation. This would increase our energy security. There is really no downside unless you buy into the whole net zero thing. I mean, one of the aspects of this politically is that they don't want to approve it during a heat wave. They want to wait until after the heat wave to approve. I mean, that is nonsense.
Of course it's nonsense. And here you go. Yet again, we're still importing something like 10% of energy through interconnectors from Europe. We're seeing what Norway is doing. Why can't we actually be leaders, thought leaders in this space and get on with it, reduce energy bills, make sure the cost of living comes down? That helps employers to employ people. That grows the economy and people get employed. I mean, for me, none of this makes any sense.
Yeah, and we should be leading on this. And just look at, you know, back in, I think it was in July, BP, British Petroleum, you know, one of the big legacy companies here in the UK, decided that they're going to sell their North Sea business because no one wants to, even if they approve this, who is going to want to invest in North Sea drilling when the government have already allowed this company to put billions into Rosebank, and Keir Starmer promised that they would approve it, and still they haven't, and there's still a question mark over whether they will. They would lose all of that money that they have invested. And as with BP, why would you want to, you know, even if the government did start to move towards being more open to drilling in the North Sea, as Andy Burnham sort of has gestured towards, it's such a liability for them, because you could put loads of money into this and then have your access to drilling denied and rejected, or you'll be hit with these enormous windfall taxes, which completely disincentivizes them investing in the first place and taking that risk. So, you know, why would you if you were looking at this from a business point of view?
Well, very well said. Very quickly, if I may, the emergency alert, which is meant to be used as a last resort to tell us about impending doom, was triggered on Friday. I was driving home after a very long week. I nearly crashed my car. It didn't go off once on my phone. It went off 4 times.
It's strange, isn't it? For different people, it seems to have gone off different numbers of times. I had it twice. Some people it seems to have just been continuous for them. I mean, I know it scared the life out of me. I wasn't doing anything particularly that mattered at the time. But I thought, what on earth is this? The only time I've had an alert go off on my phone like this was when I was in Skiathos a few years ago, when it flooded and they had that enormous sort of natural catastrophe. And it was really an emergency situation. And lots of places didn't have electricity. And this was the way that they were communicating what was going on. I mean, it was such an unnecessary alert, particularly for those in places like London where there's no risk of, you know, wild whatever. I just think, you know, particularly if you're, say, somebody who is in an abusive situation, you've got a hidden phone. This is a point many people have made. You know, that's putting you in a dangerous situation.
Very good point.
And
very
yes, you
good point.
can turn these alerts off, but I haven't done that. I mean, I didn't know that you could, and I think many people wouldn't even know how to.
No, and I think that's right. And also, just as I was driving, I was then thinking, goodness, what's going on? And then, of course, you're forced to try and read the phone, which you're not meant to be doing because you're driving a car, 4 times. And basically what it said at the end of it was, don't light a barbecue. I mean, what a nanny state we've become.
It's the boy who cried wolf, because people will now be turning these off, so that when the government might actually want to say, you know, Iran is sending nuclear weapons of mass destruction towards us or something like that, people won't get the alert, because they'll have turned the alert off, because they'll think that this is being used in a way that is unnecessary and just disruptive to their lives. I mean, it's incredible that this was ever signed off in the first place, because it really is sort of by the book, The Boy Who Cried Wolf.
Well, I agree. I think we blame Louise Hay, apparently, who signed it off. Emma, really good to talk to you. That's Emma Trimble, Senior Fellow at the New Culture Forum. I have to go to a break. After the break, it's your turn, your calls, your thoughts and your messages. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back, David Bull, in for Ian Collins all week this week, and of course last week as well. Thank you very much indeed for your company. Let's go back to that big reform announcement. I have no political stake in Reform UK, I have no official position, and I didn't have prior sight of this. I read it yesterday in the Sunday papers. Now, just to remind you, a reform government, this was the press conference they held this morning, a reform government would introduce the biggest welfare shake-up in a generation by scrapping key benefits, saving some 50 billion, not million, billion pounds a year. This is according to Robert Jenrick. This is pretty wild, actually. I thought for a party that has lost itself in the polls slightly from 31% down to 24%, to tackle welfare, I think is pretty, well, I think courageous, I think, is probably the right thing to say. £333 billion spent on welfare. Now, he said that Reform UK would abolish personal independence payments and the health element of universal credits for working age adults as part of a new package of reforms. Now, that would affect some 2.89 million people. PIP would then be replaced by a new health security allowance. There would be one interaction where it would be decided as to the level of support that you would get. So you would get this health security allowance for severe and enduring disability cases. He said only those with severe disabilities would get cash support, with remaining claimants provided necessary services and support through council-run disability support accounts. The other point, I think, which is worth making is employers would have to pay for a new type of insurance return to work cover to cover the cost of the first 2 years after an employee signed off sick. Lots of comments coming in about this. Joining me now is Lord Daniel Hannan, who is an independent peer and director of the IEA. Good afternoon to you, Daniel.
Good afternoon to you, David.
What do you make of this? I didn't have prior sight of this. I read it in the Sunday papers. I thought, crikey, to attack the welfare budget, which we know Labour can't do or tried to do, and obviously there was a rebellion by the backbenchers. Reform UK out there on the stumps before a general election, promising some pretty radical changes.
Yes, and I think there's been a real shift in the mood of the country on this issue. I think there's been a vibe shift, as they say, and all the parties are going to respond to it. Reform big time today, the Conservatives previously with their plan for 23 billion of savings, and I wouldn't be at all surprised if Andy Burnham follows. And I'll tell you why I think that is. Coming out of the lockdown and the pandemic, there was a lot of interest in health, including in mental health, and I think a lot of people were prepared, if you like, to give claimants the benefit of the doubt. We'd been through this wretched experience with COVID. Yes, maybe some people had ended up with anxiety, depression, because they'd been told over and over again not to set foot outside the door because there was a terrible, terrifying virus. But 6 years on, still to be having these huge increases in claims, almost all in mental health, 30,000 people a day being signed off as too sick to work, 1 adult in 4 claiming to be disabled. I mean, that makes a mockery of the definition of that word as you and I and most people listening understand it. The bill increasing for working age adults to 110 billion by the end of this parliament in a country where we've now got the 4th largest debt in the world. I mean, these things are unsustainable. I think most people, most voters understand that they're unsustainable. And so it's great to see the political parties catching up with public opinion.
I mean, it really is extraordinary, and there were other parts of that. I saw Robert Jenrick deliver that speech just as I was coming in here, but also there were other parts in that as well, saying Reform UK would ban foreigners from claiming benefits. Now, of course, there would be reciprocality over there. That would also involve re-looking at the Brexit deal as well. I mean, that's another hot potato.
Isn't it extraordinary that we pay benefits to foreigners? I mean, isn't that a truly bizarre thing? That we have an obligation
without them paying in.
Isn't I mean, who would have started from here? By the way, maybe a less popular point, but nonetheless, I think worth making. Quite odd that we pay money to Brits abroad. Benefits, like, you know, out of work. I mean, if somebody is not living here, that's not directly our responsibility. If somebody's just moved permanently to the Spanish Costas, slightly odd that we can still be paying their PIP or whatever it is. So I would get rid of both of those. But you see, what's interesting is both of the right of centre parties are now in the same place on that. The Conservatives came out some months ago and said we're going to take all entitlements away except for a small number of settled EU nationals who are already covered under existing treaties. They're in the same place on replacing cash handouts with support in kind. They are in the same place on reassessing claimants, and they're in the same place on disqualifying low-level mental health conditions or neurodiversity. And so, if you like, I can see a consensus forming. And by the way, isn't it great to have two parties, for once, campaigning on how much they're going to save rather than on how much they're going to spend? I think that's brilliant. I want to see much more of that. But that's why I say, David, the interesting question to me is how long until Andy Burnham makes some move in this direction, because he too can see which way public opinion is moving.
So can I ask you this question? It's one that I'm posing to everyone watching or listening to this afternoon. Do you think this crackdown by Reform UK is a vote winner or a vote loser, given that in the constituencies where they're going to do better or very well, many of those people will be on benefits?
Yes, I think it is a vote winner. And I'll tell you why. I mean, I'm familiar with that argument. Fraser Nelson, who is brilliant, and for my money, maybe the best columnist in the country, wrote a column yesterday saying, huge mistake. All these benefits claimants are clustered in Reform seats. You know, Clacton is close to the top of the list. But where I think he misses something, uncharacteristically, is that the neighbours of those claimants, if they can see that some of them are claiming either through straightforward bogus claims or when they really don't need to be, they're giving themselves a massive benefit of the doubt, those neighbours also vote. And they are more numerous than the claimants. So I think it will be a vote winner. And I'll tell you why. It's just because we've seen such a huge shift in numbers. Like, going into lockdown, this was not a massive problem. Between 2010 and 2020, there'd been quite a successful effort to shift people out of long-term unemployment or worklessness into the world of work. And we both lived through that time, David, and we could see. I mean, I can remember when I was standing as a Euro MP in 2009, when you went to a club, a pub, a golf course, a hotel, anywhere where you were making a speech, all the receptionists were Polish, Lithuanian. By 2014, you were hearing local accents because there'd been a few tweaks to cutting some benefits and also cutting some taxes. that incentivized people to work, so that if you were a single mum who could maybe work 20 hours a week or something, you would now get to keep every penny pretty much, and people responded to incentives. Now, what happened in 2020 was that the lockdown introduced hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of working Brits who had never before claimed a penny in grants or assistance to a different way of living. And some of those people decided that they liked living that way and that they didn't mind having some drop in their income if it meant not going back to work. And the way in which that is mainly expressed, the big growth, has been in these long-term sickness and disability benefits. And so I think any party is going to have to tackle this. And that's why I say it'd be very interesting to me to see whether Labour does it. You mentioned earlier, quite correctly, that Labour MPs had voted down the slightly feeble Starmer-Reeves attempt just a little bit to slow the rate of increase of these benefits. And they did so, a lot of them as new MPs, because they were worried by the number of PIP claimants in their constituencies. I think they will have now worked out that there are also votes from other people in their constituencies who are especially resentful when they are living next to people who are choosing not to work. And I think they'll be a little bit more sophisticated about how the politics will play out. I also think, frankly, and I'm not any kind of expert on internal Labour dynamics, but from the Labour MPs I talk to, I think they will be much readier to accept reforms from Andy Burnham, who they regard as one of them, than they were from Rachel Reeves, who they never really liked. And so I think there is a reasonable chance that we will see some reforms even from Labour this side of an election. And so isn't that great? I mean, what a happy day that you and I are sitting here talking about the three biggest parties in the polls all talking about how to save them.
If that is true, and for me, this kind of goes back to the British sense of fair play. What about this one point where my mouth dropped open when he mentioned this? He said long-term unemployed would have to face 20 hours of mandatory community service, which means doing something in the community or picking up litter or painting, I don't know, graffiti in your village hall or whatever it is. I love this policy. Will the public?
Well, I think the public will love the policy. Whether it could actually be implemented is a different question. That was the one bit that I thought was slightly Malcolm Tucker.
Oh, did you?
Headline driven, right? And because, of course, everyone likes the idea of getting the layabouts to clean up the graffiti.
Well, I mean, it's very like the United States, isn't it? In some ways, with the chain gang. Well, you know, with prisoners.
If you can make it work, right?
If you can make it work.
The truth is that we're trying to save money here, and organising these schemes can be very expensive. It requires a lot of bureaucracy from the local authorities. There are, I think, Rob Jenrick said this morning, 330,000 people in this category. Imagine if half of those turned up the next day, right? Saying, "Okay, what do you want me to do?" I mean, that would just that would be more than faintly ridiculous. It would be impossible to accommodate them. So I'd be surprised if that particular policy sees the light of day. But of course, the general principle that you shouldn't get something for nothing, I think that is absolutely right.
Really good to talk to you. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon. That's Lord Daniel Hannan, Independent Peer and Director of the IEA. Right, we'll take a break. After the break, I promise, it's your go. Your calls, thoughts and messages. After this break, this is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
But before the break, I was talking to Lord Daniel Hannan about Reform UK's policy to save £50 billion a year in welfare cuts. Good afternoon, Dr. David. This is Sean in Gloucester. Good afternoon, Sean. It's been a very long time. Please tell me you're back for good. It would make my day. Well, that's very sweet. Just for these 2 weeks for the moment. I fully agree with the reform policy announcement. Why should undeserving people just be given money? Make them earn it like us that have to pay for them. We need to free businesses up from all the nonsense, red tape. Then they'll invest and they'll boost our economy. He goes on to say we need a reformed government and soon. Hi, David. Andy Burnham's Labour government can ban single-use barbecues, but they won't ban the sale of rubber dinghies that carry more than 6 people. That's Brian in Hayes. Very pertinent point. Very good. We were also talking about prisons. The fact is we've got all these prison places that are empty because they don't have the prison staff to actually man the prisons. I mean, you couldn't make any of this up. David, this is Phil in Thurrock. Maybe I'm a bit thick, but couldn't the government recruit the prison officers, train them and keep the good ones per Reform's new work for benefits plan? Yes, ta-da, you say ta-da, yes, but what I understand is that all these people who are being trained at great expense then obviously don't like it and leave, which is a major problem. So therefore you have to look at the conditions of work and why it is that they are leaving, because we desperately need those prison places to be open. Let's talk to Karen now in Bournemouth. Good afternoon, Karen.
Hello, how are you today?
I'm all right, thank you. How are you?
I'm good, thanks.
Good, good. Oh, hello, doggy.
Yeah, that's Elsa. Regarding today's announcement.
Yeah, what do you think?
Well, one of the biggest criticisms that have been thrown at Reform since the very beginning is that, oh, they're just a populist party.
Yeah, very good point.
And now you can see gradually as they're building up their policies that they're not just the populist parties. They're actually looking at these things seriously, and that they're going into much greater depth.
Yeah, I think for me the most interesting part to this is that it took months of work from all sorts of people coming together to make these policies, and obviously well thought through, well researched, well delivered, and so far as I can see, the public seem to be on side, even though it's a tricky, thorny issue.
Well, it would only be a tricky, thorny issue if enough people were on the benefits. And I think that you've got a lot of people on benefits, and they're talking about, the idea of Europe arguing about it and that they won't get benefits. But the fact was that when we did when we were in the EU, an awful lot more EU citizens came to England than British citizens.
Yeah, with the freedom of movement. Quite.
Yeah.
I mean, but when you're talking about, does that seem fair that we say, right, we're not going to pay any foreign national?
Well, no, because I think, yes, it is fair in the sense that because if they're just going to come over and claim the benefits, what's the point of having them? It would reduce the housing threats. It would reduce, this whole idea that what people don't realise or the other parties are trying to ignore is that if you've got too many people in too small a space, everything subsequent to that...
it just seems to me that we're incredibly generous as a nation, far too generous.
Well, we always have been, though.
That is very true. Karen, really good to talk to you this afternoon. Let's talk to Matt now, who's in Cheshire. Good afternoon, Matt.
Hi, good afternoon, David. Just on sort of benefits.
Yeah.
I've worked in a job centre. I've been through the entire mental health system as well.
Sure.
I've been unemployed, so I know sort of each sector of this problem, if you like.
Yeah.
When they start to reassess people for mental health problems, rather than farm them out with contracts to outside companies who are usually taking the mickey, totally incompetent and not customer focused, what they should do is train civil servants or DWP employees to be able to assess them themselves, which I would imagine is not that difficult.
Have you been through the system yourself? Did you say?
I've been through the mental health system. I had quite a severe problem a few years ago. Some people came around to my house. I was interviewed at the sort of in the middle room table, and I showed them paperwork that from my issues and what I'd been through. It wasn't just basically a diagnosis from my doctor. It was proof that I'd been to a psychiatric doctor, and it was actual irrefutable proof that I had not been well, if you know what I mean.
Of course.
Not, or I'm slightly cheesed off for a few months because I've got no money, or I'm a bit down because it's winter. So what they need to be able to do is to have DWP staff be able to work that out for themselves without having the need for sort of medical knowledge, if you like.
Well, I mean, so one other thing I read this morning was there are websites where you pay £50, for example, and it helps you to maximise your claim by telling you how to answer the questions that are put to you so you get more money. That seems absolutely outrageous, and we need to clamp down on that, don't we?
Oh, the people like that should be put in prison or deported, of course. It's disgraceful, David. There are people out there who are really, really ill.
Yeah.
Really ill, like mentally unstable, who need desperate help, who are on waiting lists for 2 to 3 years. And there are people swanning around who've got next to nothing wrong with them apart from something that they've named, some label that they've given to themselves because they realise it's beneficial to them.
Well, I certainly know friends of mine who, in my humble opinion, are gaming the system. They know how to answer those questions. And quite frankly, why would you work if you can be paid not to work?
I mean, I understand it. I was refused money once years ago when I was in a similar position. I had to sign on and I had to pretend I was looking for a job when I was actually on the brink of insanity. And yet eventually they came round and sort of saw the error of the ways, but I had to chase it as if I wasn't entitled to it. Next thing you know, after COVID, they're dishing it out like jelly tots.
Well, I think that's right. And that's kind of what Daniel was saying, which is that COVID was a once-in-a-lifetime, hopefully, experience. And I think the state went overboard and went far too far the other way. Can I just ask you, though, in terms of this crackdown, clearly what is intentioned is truly those people who are very unwell, who desperately need help from the state get it, and those shirkers don't get it. Is it well-intentioned?
I would offer reform help with that, being as I've been through it, if they ever needed it. I genuinely would, because, and I'm sure as a doctor you know yourself, if the paperwork is there and the medical history of someone having genuine mental illness, not as we call it now, I've got mental health is what people say now, don't they?
Everyone has mental health, but yeah. Well, they do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course, it's either good or bad.
And having been through the system, let me just ask you this. So one of the other policies, or parts of this policy, is to have one assessment only, not to have multiple assessments by multiple agencies. Is that a good thing?
I think it probably is, because a lot of these places where you go to have those assessments, I think originally I was meant to go to Manchester, which is like 9 miles away. If you're really ill, and you're sort of really ill and paranoid and you're feeling quite, you don't want to go to that.
Of course you don't.
Not because you're trying to avoid it. You just don't want to go to it because it seems a bit scary. But if you're just sort of gaming the system and such, which there obviously are hundreds of thousands of, and they've, like you say, they've all learned how to do that.
Well, they're learning, yes.
From word of mouth.
Word of mouth, websites, people like this lady charging 50 quid. There's a picture of her in one of the newspapers today.
I mean, it's shocking, David. How insulting is that to people who?
I agree. And just finally, if I can ask you, so long-term unemployed, and I know people who are unemployed for a very long time, they've never looked for a job, they say they're looking for a job, they haven't looked for a job, they're going to face 20 hours of mandatory community service. What will that do you think, for the long-term unemployed? Essentially, what Reform is saying is you have to do something to get your cash. That means cleaning up the graffiti, painting the village hall, picking up litter. What do you think of that?
I mean, I'm OCD about street cleanliness, so I would love all that. You know, I really love all that. But what I would say is, if there's people sat in hotels and stood around in town centres who've only been in the country 3 months and they're doing nothing, and British citizens are being forced to clean their own streets, that may seem a little unfair, if you know what I mean.
Well, as I said, my mouth dropped open when I heard that policy, as Robert Jenrick explained it. Matt, really good to talk to you. Thank you very much for your insight as well, having been through that system. Steve says, afternoon, David, 20 hours mandatory labour for unemployment. Crikey. I remember back in the 60s my dad saying about this. I remember my dad saying about it as well. So it shows we've come full circle. But I wonder if it is a vote winner, actually. We shall see. Lots of more of you getting in touch as well. I was surprised when we talked about British nationals getting benefits in foreign countries. This is from Sue in Cambridge. Good afternoon, Sue. David, it's extremely hard to get benefits in France. All sorts of translations of new versions of birth certificates need to be issued before anything will be paid out. And they may come to your house to check you out. I would agree. Also, I think Spain is probably very similar, actually. Very difficult, I would imagine, to get benefits in Spain. It seems far too easy to get them here. Keep all of those messages coming in, please. Is Reform's welfare crackdown a vote winner or a vote loser? Your thoughts. Was it a little bit punchy for this sort of stage of the electoral cycle? 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. You can message us on X as well at talkTV. Very quickly, we're also talking about the boats. Really good to see you. Thank you, Michelle. If you think Mahmood has been doing anything to stop the boats, you are crazy. And it's strange there's room for now thousands of people tweeting anything negative about illegal immigration or Islam, isn't it? Very strange indeed. Keep those messages coming in. Paula says, from Bexhill-on-Sea, says, 20 years ago in Essex, there were people tidying up verges for community service because they had a non-custodial fine. They had to wear jackets that had those words printed on the back. We'll take a break. After the break, I'm going to be talking about our big second story, the size of the big prisons that can't actually take the prisoners.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, very good afternoon to you. Just after 2 o'clock on Monday, August the 17th, I'm David Bull, in for Ian Collins all this week and, of course, last week as well. Thank you very much indeed for your company and all your messages as well. Let's look at the big headlines at this hour. Reform UK has vowed to force long-term welfare claimants into 20 hours a week of community work, with Robert Jenrick unveiling alarm clock Britain plans targeting anyone out of work for over 12 months. Britain's new £400 million super prison, HMP Millsike, has almost, wait for this, 350 cells sitting empty because it cannot recruit enough staff despite chronic overcrowding elsewhere in the system. And cancer patients are facing delayed treatment after GPs revealed over a quarter of their referrals were rejected, including some flag for red flag cancer symptoms. And those are the headlines that are making the press this hour. Let's go back to this prison story. We've been talking about the early release scheme, 88,000 prison places in this country, 10,000 of those made up of foreign nationals. And yet it transpires. If you remember last week, we found out 1,800 of those cells have been closed for fire modifications, goodness knows why. And then today we find out that Britain's newest super prison, which cost just a mere £400 million, has hundreds of empty cells because it cannot recruit enough staff. Now, this is HMP Millsike. It's near York. They started taking inmates in March of 2025 and has space for nearly 1,500 prisoners. Operationally, though, it's restricted to just over 1,100. That means there are 350 cells empty. And apparently the reason for that is they don't have enough prison officers. Now, this has emerged after Andy Burnham ordered Alex Norris, who is the Justice Secretary, to devise a way to prevent the early release of two of PC Andrew Harper's killers who were jailed for manslaughter in 2020. So, as of last month, there were 344 unoccupied cells which could accommodate the majority of those 470 people serving manslaughter, which would include those people who killed PC Andrew Harper. Joining me now, Vanessa Frake, a Justice Advisor for Reform UK. I know her as the former prison governor. A formidable woman. Good afternoon to you, Vanessa.
Good afternoon, David. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you as well. Look, we spent a lot of time, you and I, speaking on and offline about prison places, what's going right, what's going wrong. We've got this Victorian infrastructure, we've got new super prisons, and even the super prisons don't have enough space because they don't have enough prison officers. So the bit that I don't understand, Vanessa, so they take on these new recruits, they train them, and then they leave. Why?
Well, I think there's three main reasons here, David. I think one is they're trained, they're put onto the wings, they don't realise, because the training is like 5 weeks long to become a prison officer. You know, they're young, they don't realise the volatile nature of a prison. They're meeting real criminals who will try and manipulate you left, right and centre. There's violence, there's self-harm, there's attempted suicides or indeed suicides, and a lot of them leave. They can't cope with it. And the problem with Millsike is that it's a privately run prison by Mighty, a company that has never run a prison before.
Is that right? Seriously, never run a prison?
No.
So how did they get the tender? How did they get the contract?
You tell me. You'd have to ask Boris Johnson and following him Rishi Sunak for that answer. I have no idea. When it was announced at the time, I was flabbergasted. Mighty were the works department at Wormwood Scrubs and absolute made a ear of it. So I was quite surprised that they were allowed to run it. It's run into a lot of problems on opening. Many said it was opened too quickly. The staff, in my opinion, should have been there waiting, not recruit as you go along. But of course, with the private sector, you know, they are under strict government contracts. Their pay is known to be worse than the public sector. They don't pay retention fees to keep staff there. And I think the starting rate for Mighty is something around about £29,000 a year to walk into, you know, a jail full of criminals.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult. Also, you know, location. My Millsyke is, you know, out in the middle of nowhere. It's at least 40 minutes from York. There's no sort of facilities around it. So it's very difficult.
Yeah, and so we talked about these places that aren't being utilised. We also, I think, last week found out 1,800 prison places were sitting there because of fire alarm adjustments, and they're rotating through the old Victorian stock at the same time. I mean, clearly, we've got a major crisis. Why don't we actually pause those fire alarm adjustments to ensure that criminals stay behind bars? That's the bit I don't get.
Well, I'm sure you're going to love me when I say this, David. Health and safety.
Oh, I do love you, yes.
Look, you know, we had ours done in Wormwood Scrubs. If a prisoner sets fire to his cell, the smoke, because there's no venting of it, the smoke fills up the landing very quickly. And you can imagine the effects of that. It's a toxic smoke. It's not a, you know, a nice smoke, if you like. That is the problem. But, you know, David, I can say this 1,000 times a day. This goes back to non-investment in our old Victorian jails.
Yeah, and people have put this off for a very long time, haven't they? The fact is that we knew that this problem was coming down the line. I was looking up actually earlier on about the new prisons that were built. HMP Five Wells opened in 2022, Fosse Way opened in 2023, Wellingborough opened in 2022, Millsyke now open. Are there others that are in development that are going to come online, or have we stopped?
No, I'm pretty sure that there are a couple. I don't know the actual names or the places of them, but, you know, this government has said that it's going to build 14,000 places by 2030. But the problem with that is the projection by 2030 is over 108,000 prisoners. So, you know, they're still not going to have enough prison places.
So as an advisor to Reform UK, what's Reform UK going to do about it if Reform gets into government?
Well, I think, you know, you've got to look outside the box, haven't you? Because I think Ian Aitchison had a good idea the other day. He was former prison governor as well. And he said about having a multi-task force about the prison crisis, because I don't think one decision is going to solve this. You know, Reform are looking at renting out prison places from abroad for convicted foreign nationals.
Like El Salvador?
Yeah, like El Salvador, Kosovo. It's not a new thing. It would be a new thing on the size that Reform wants to do it. We're talking sort of 6,000 plus prisoners. I think we have to look at the women's estate. Many women are jailed for low-level offences. In fact, a woman is twice as likely as a man to get a first-time prison sentence for a non-violent crime. And I think that we have to look at making better use of the facilities that we have, get those that are out of order back in order as soon as possible. But if you have a company that like Mighty being used to put in that fire thing, you can just imagine the complications that can arise and the delays. And of course, the delays cost money and they cost beds.
So Ian Aitchison also says, really, we should declare a national emergency if we can't house the prisoners in this country. I was about to say, do you agree?
Yeah, absolutely, I do. I think, you know, we've got to the point where, you know, we make a little decision here, we make a little decision there. We're still unsure whether the killers of PC Harper will be eligible for the early release scheme or not. You know, and, you know, I just think somebody needs to take the bull by the horns and get on with it.
And Reform UK also talked about Nightingale prisons, setting up these pop-up prisons, rather like we saw the Nightingale hospitals in COVID that were never used. Is that really something that can be done? Is it feasible, logistical? Is it cost efficient? How would you do it?
Well, I think, you know, there are many prisons that are just lying empty. Dartmoor is one, for example, that could be used. I think that, you know, there are old...
So why is it empty?
I don't know. I don't run this government, David. I think, here is the Prime Minister, the leader of our country, like we had the other one whittering about here, there and everywhere and not doing anything.
Well, he
And
said,
meanwhile,
no, Vanessa, he says, I'm pushing it to the very limits of what's possible. I'm incumbent on me to do everything within my power. I see no change, no shift, no nothing.
Do you know what he's doing, David? He's moving the prison crisis back into the communities and victims and survivors of serious crime, and he's not taking responsibility for it.
So we talked about early release. Now, the government then capitulated, said rapists, murderers and child sexual offenders will not be eligible for early release. But in today's Telegraph, it now transpires that paedophiles and domestic abusers are being spared jail under Labour's new sentencing law. The reason for that is because if the sentence is reduced to being under 12 months, they can leave. That seems insane.
Yep, absolutely. Totally agree with you. And, my heart goes out to all the victims and survivors of domestic abuse who are now worried after a letter, 9,000 of them were just popped through their door. No communication, nothing, just a letter saying your offender may qualify for the early release scheme. I think it's shocking. I think, it's about time that victims and survivors of crime could walk the street safely and prisoners couldn't. And I think it's absolutely ridiculous that those have been left out.
Well, I just want to give you one example. Callum Powell, 34, avoided prison. He admitted possessing almost 3,000 indecent images of children. He had 178 Category A images depicting the most serious abuse. The judge, Amanda Kelly, said the circumstances are so serious that only a custodial sentence can be justified. She raised the starting point from 12 months to 18 months. Because he then pleaded guilty, they reduced his term to a third of that, to 12 months, therefore triggered the presumption that he can be released early. I mean, it makes a mockery of justice.
Of course it does. And how is that justice for the victims of crime? Well, it's not, is it? And we have these conversations periodically about our justice system. The whole justice system, from the courts to the police to the prisons, is a shambles.
So how does it get reformed? How do you actually then look at that system, look at what works, look at what doesn't work, and how do you implement change?
Look, I think we need to decide what we want our prisons to do. Do we want our prisons to rehabilitate people, or do we just want them to warehouse people? Do we want rehabilitation in prisons or not? Because at the moment, all we're doing is warehousing prisoners, and we're letting them back out into our communities to commit further and further crime.
I thought the whole point of these new jails were to rehabilitate. I was just reading here, this is about Millsake, saying they can grow vegetables and flowers, they've got 3 multi-use games areas, outdoor gym equipment, 16 training workshops, they can learn skills from bricklaying, carpentry, waste management to being a barista or a barber. It sounds like a pretty good set of things that they're allowed to do.
Yeah, absolutely. But unfortunately, there's only 1,100 of them. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Look, if learning a trade in prison helps towards resettlement, to getting a job, then I'm all for it, because I'd rather have safer communities. I don't want people turned out of jail better prisoners to go on to reoffend and reoffend and reoffend. That's not what I want. That's not why I joined the prison service.
I think when it comes to the election, this is going to be right up there on the political agenda for people when they're looking for the next government.
Yeah, I think it will be. I mean, good grief. How long have we been talking about overcrowding in our jails? For years and years and years. And it's finally got to saturation point where we're now letting dangerous criminals out because we're worried that the whole system is going to break down.
Yeah. Can I just ask you about these 2 comments I've got here? This is Becca. Good afternoon to you, Becca. She said, my son left as a prison officer after 6 months. He witnessed a horrific attack on a colleague and wasn't allowed to digress from what they'd been told in training. He was told they couldn't because the inmates, wait for this, human rights outweigh the staff, and they didn't want lawsuits.
Well, I don't really understand the ins and outs of that,
I think essentially they couldn't whistleblow. They felt that actually the human rights of the prisoners were paramount.
Well, look, I don't know where he wanted to whistleblow to. Certainly, like his managers, absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't know the full ins and outs.
No, of course you don't. Very difficult for you.
It really would be difficult to comment on that.
And then just in terms of recruiting prison officers, let's finish there then. So we talked about the money, the lack of training, being run by a private company. If you were in charge, how would you recruit better trained, more experienced prison officers?
Do you know what we used to do when I joined? Most of the prison officers were from ex-military, those that had come out of the army, out of the Air Force, out of the Navy, and they were already regimented into regimes, so you didn't have that side of things. That's what I would look at. Going around to different recruitment offices and recruit specifically those that are coming out of our armed forces, have sort of stands, fates, etc., etc. There is so much you could do, but it's having the will to do it. And also, David, this isn't going to be cheap. You know, 400 million on a new prison. By 2030, how much would that cost to build a new prison?
Very good point. Vanessa, always good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed for your time this afternoon. That's Vanessa Frake, Justice Advisor to Reform UK and a former prison governor. Lots of messages coming in. I'm just going to read a couple of these. Hi, David. This is Michelle in Bristol. It's been so nice to see you back these past 2 weeks. As for PIP reforms, so we're going back there. As for PIP reforms, I think it's so important for everyone to read the wording carefully and not to take too much notice of alarming headlines on social media. I don't think it is an election-losing policy. I'm in receipt of PIP, trying to recover from anorexia, plus other issues that I have. It's very stressful to hear about reforms and what they will mean, but I totally get why reform is necessary. So that's really interesting. So Michelle here, who claims PIP, doesn't think that these reforms are a bad idea. That's the question I'm asking this afternoon. Do you think essentially what Robert Jenrick has outlined today is reform's welfare crackdown a vote winner or a vote loser, and why? 0344 499 1000. You can text the word talk in your message to 87222. You can message us on X as well at talkTV, and this is talkTV.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Lots of messages coming in about reform's policy. Some of you saying it's a really bad idea. Many of you saying it's a really good idea. Mark in Suffolk, my home county, says, "Hi, David. Great show, mate. Thank you very much. Labour need to be called out for continuing to let women and children in danger. Their policies of letting dangerous criminals out and not managing illegal immigration is going to end in tears. Goodness help us." Not quite what he said, but anyway, paraphrased. David, this is Steve. Are you telling me a prisoner's got a barista course? What, 3 months? Prisoner in for 4 years? Then if there are 2,000 or more are put through this course, the country only needs so many baristas. That's Steve. I think the point was that they can do all sorts of things, and the idea is to rehabilitate, which Vanessa said is something that you would want to do, and particularly in the new prisons that you can do. It's all well and good, but we can't open the prisons fast enough, and then you can't find the prison officers to actually staff it. This is interesting. Gary says, "Good afternoon, Dr. David. Well done, reform, and about time. Look after those that truly need it and weed out the con artists. And we all know plenty of them, those that crow about having to renegotiate the Brexit deal to do this. Goodness, it needs sorting. It was a rubbish deal by Lib Dem Boris." Vinny says, "Prisons need staff. Why don't you use the Army and Navy?" This made me laugh. David, re-recruiting prison officers, there need to be incentives, or maybe possibly just pay them more. Let's take a call. David's on the line from Cheltenham. Good afternoon.
Yeah, hi. How are you?
I'm all right, thanks very much indeed. Yes, but nice to be back. What's on your mind this afternoon?
Yeah, no. So when I was a youngster, I was unemployed for about a month, and I couldn't wait to get back into work again because it was one of those situations whereby it was embarrassing not to be in work.
Sure.
And I always wanted to have more in life, go on holidays, buy a house. So I can't understand why wouldn't you want that, and why would you want to be on benefits long term? I can't understand it. I can't understand the mindset.
I think it's generational. I think sometimes it goes down through families. I also think that if you get a lot in benefits, you then... And I was looking at a couple of case studies today where people on benefits get paid more than those in work. So why would you work?
Well, then that needs looking at, and but then if you want to drive an Aston Martin, I'm just behind one now, and I've got a 4911. Why would you want to be on benefits?
Wow, you're doing well.
Well, not as well as you.
I don't know where you got that from, but anyway, thank you very much for your call, David. David in Cheltenham. Mark is on the line. I'd love to know why you think that. Mark is on the line from Lincolnshire. Good afternoon.
Hi there, David. Good afternoon.
Yeah, nice to talk to you. So what's on your mind this afternoon?
Yeah, these benefit changes that Reform are talking about.
Yeah, what do you think? £50 billion a year could be saved through these cuts to welfare.
I think when they're not even willing to even think about addressing the triple lock issue, I think it's a bit disgusting of them, to be honest.
Why?
Because what this always does, and, it just speaks to how Tory-fied the Reform really are. These are Tory-style cuts, just attack the poorest in society.
But are they the poorest? Are there not people in there gaming the system?
Yes, there are. Well, all I'm really talking about, David, is that where you're talking about, particularly when you're addressing benefits for people with health issues.
Sure.
You have to have a more nuanced approach to this. What you can't do is say, right, well, that stops now, and now you have to apply for this one. Because the reality is, the system itself takes forever to go through.
But that's the point from Reform, which is they want to completely change the system. So you're assessed once, it's streamlined, you don't have to be assessed by multiple agencies, and therefore, if you come under the criteria, you get benefits. That's fair, isn't it?
No, not when you're just going to suddenly say, right, well, here you've got these disabled people, people with actual health issues, and you say, right, well, that stops now. Now you have to apply for this one new system, which will take you anywhere between 6 and 12 months to actually go through. So in that period, you're going to end up in a situation where your entire benefit payment is essentially slashed in half until you...
Where did you get that figure from? Because it would be phased in anyway, and if you're able to get benefits, you'll continue to receive them.
No, because they're talking about scrapping. For example, David, I'm talking about my own personal situation here, David. Okay, I claim universal credit, and I get the higher health element of it. Okay,
Right.
I have significant issues. I'm registered housebound by my GP.
Sure.
So when they assessed me, it took me a year to get that higher health element.
Yeah.
Okay, a bloody year, because it took me about 6 months just to get them to come and assess me at home.
Yeah.
Ended up having to get the GP involved, everything else. So if you can understand it from my point of view, David.
No, I can indeed. And of course, the devil is in the detail, isn't it? In the implementation of it. And what they're saying is that the health part of universal credit would go, but you would then get a health security allowance, which would then allow you to live independently, or at least to have the facilities that you need at home, which you currently have.
Yeah, but they're not specifying. Is that just going to transition straight into that? Are they saying, right, well, that stops you, you have to essentially reapply, as I was saying? Because everything I've seen with this suggests that they will just cut that benefit there and then you have to reapply for the new one, which is how it's always been done. Every time they attack things like this is how it always works. And it always ends up, I understand why parties want to do it, because it needs addressing, the issue needs addressing. But what happens is people like myself that have quite clearly genuine issues, you know, we get caught in the crossfire. You know, and
would you not welcome weeding out those people who are making fraudulent claims, so that therefore you can be in receipt of benefits because you need it?
Yes, absolutely, I do, David. This is why I'm saying it requires a more nuanced approach.
Sure.
Because within the benefit system, they will be aware. They should be able to have the ability to create a list of people specifying on health situation. Okay, so they would see that somebody like myself or somebody that's registered disabled, all the rest of it, they will have access to that information. All I'm saying is, for people like that, then it surely should be more nuanced, that you don't just say, right, well, we're stopping it there and then.
So, but I don't think they have. Have they actually said that? I don't think they have.
Well, this is what I'm saying, David, because they're not specifying what they're actually going to do.
Yeah.
The nuance of the actual policy.
I mean, I think the idea behind the announcement was to give signposting of a general direction, and that would then be specified at a later date, because obviously that would be on the manifesto and it would be up to the electorate to choose the party they want to govern the country.
Well, yes, exactly. You know, I mean, as I say, David, I'm all in favour of clamping down on the benefit system, because I see it myself, if I'm honest, David. You know, I see plenty of people that are taking the absolute mickey. You know, and they wind me up just as much as they probably wind you up.
Of course.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because they drive me nuts, because I'm sitting here thinking, well, what are you doing? You know, you're giving people like me a bloody bad name. You know, as I say, from my perspective, David, as I say...
So it's about... So what you're saying is the implementation of this needs to be carefully thought through so it doesn't penalise people like you.
Yeah, basically. Because I genuinely don't need the extra stress of this. You know, just to give you a really brief overview, David, I have a rare heart condition. I don't need the stress because of that.
Yeah.
It's blood pressure dependent, so obviously I don't need my blood pressure going really high.
Of course.
Crap like this has a habit of doing. I also have, you know, a severe balance problem. That's why I'm actually housebound. I struggle to get around. I don't claim PIP out of I don't morally want to claim PIP, though I'm approaching a point where I'm probably going to have to, because I need help in my home, because I'm struggling to get things done in here. And I'm only 51, David, you know. So the idea of reform popping along without a nuanced approach and just saying, bang, there you go, sunshine, you know what I mean? It's just like, as I said at the beginning, it seems rather cruel and disgusting to me. If that's how they're going to approach this, then they need to have a little bit of a think about how they actually do this.
No, it's a very fair comment. It's a very fair comment, Mark. Thank you very much indeed for your call. That's Mark in Lincolnshire. David, this is John. He says, as per usual, you seem to think prisons are for punishment and rehabilitation. The media always ignores the third and the most important purpose, which is deterrent. The savings that the threat of prison has in deterring others from committing crime are incalculable. I know, and that is why I want the term term, which is set down by the court, to apply. I don't want early release of prisoners because it sends out entirely the wrong message to those people thinking of committing crime. I'm absolutely with you. Becky, good afternoon. Crikey, Becky, that's a very long message. Hi, David. I've loved watching your shows this past week. I'm a reform supporter. I am also someone who legitimately has physical disabilities with over 20 years of medical evidence of how that affects me. I worked full-time in a high-flying professional career for as long as I could. Then I worked part-time as long as I could. And I could just about manage using up all my savings. Now I'm physically unable to work and even have an independent legal medical report required for legal purposes that backs everything up. Things don't get better, they get worse, and every day I try to fight it, but even typing on this smartphone causes enough damage to my fingers. They swell up much of the time, will cause breathing. And you go on to talk about how difficult it is for you, and I completely understand. Genuinely disabled people are entitled to a dignified and reasonable level of existence. Completely agree. I paid taxes as long as I could, knowing my taxes were there for the people who needed them. What must be tackled is the people who fleece the system. I know they're there, as I've seen them when I've had to be assessed, such as the person who was wheeled out of the assessment centre. Then as soon as they were down the road, they got up, folded up the wheelchair and then walked away with their companion. But genuinely, people should not be made to suffer because of them. Quite right, I agree totally with that. The answer is to investigate police and crack down on the people who can work. Keep all those messages coming in. I'm obviously, you know, it's causing huge consternation and contrary opinions here about reform's welfare. Do you think this crackdown that's been outlined by Robert Jenrick this morning, is it the right thing to do? Is it a vote winner? Is it a vote loser? Or do you think it's somewhere in between? Get in touch, please. 0344 499 1000. You can text the word talk in your message to 87222. You can message us on X as well at talkTV. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Some very passionate opinions there about Reform's policy today, which was outlined. Do you think Reform's welfare crackdown is a vote loser or a vote winner? Get in touch. Let me know your thoughts on that. I want to turn now to health, something I know a little bit about. But this is a really interesting story. It's in a number of papers, actually, in the Times and Daily Mail today. This is patients with cancer symptoms are at risk of having their treatment delayed due to the rejection of GP referrals. This is according to doctors. There's been a survey of GPs in England. They found out that a quarter of attempted referrals by doctors when the GP refers to see a specialist were rejected. They were returned as unwanted advice and guidance that they hadn't requested. I tried to make head or tail of this morning. So that included rejections for patients referred for red flag suspected cancer symptoms. So the GP essentially says, I'm worried about this person, they've got a red flag symptom, can you have a referral to a specialist? The NHS seems to be pushing them back to the GP. Now, more than a third of the bounce backs asked doctors to do work considered outside their remit. What on earth is going on? Dr. Dean Eggett, who is a GP and CEO of Doncaster Local Medical Committee, joins me now. Very good afternoon to you.
Great to see you, Dr. Bull.
Well, look, does any of this make any sense to you? Because clearly what's happening, the GPs have a high index of suspicion. They then decide they're going to refer to see a specialist opinion, and then somehow it's being lost, and it's going to through some mechanism where essentially they're getting advice and guidance, and then it's thrown back to them.
I am so glad you're picking up this story, because actually I've had this problem myself with 2 patients in the last week, where I have referred 2 patients for suspected skin cancer, and I've had letters back from our local dermatology service saying, we can't accept these referrals because you haven't attached photographs of the lesion. Can you please take photographs and re-refer the patient?
Right.
Now,
Why? Right. Did you?
No, absolutely not. So I have written back to them saying, well, this is absurd. Do you want me to refer to the local photography service, or are you just going to accept the patient? Because let's be clear for people listening here, this isn't just a photograph. I can't just take out my iPhone and take a picture. This is actually a special medical photography. And I'm certainly no qualified medical photographer. I'm a GP. I look at the lesion, I take the history, I say, I'm worried I'm going to get a specialist to look. But there is now another hurdle in place for us GPs who are desperately trying to care for patients. It's almost impossible to get a patient into hospital nowadays with these emails.
Right. So what? Well, I'd never heard of this. So what is the advice? Because obviously I'm so old and trained a long time ago. But the advice and guidance. What the heck is that?
Well, back in the day, we would have phoned the hospital and said, you know, Dr. George, I'm worried about this patient. What do you think? Would have had a chat over the telephone and would have decided what to do together. Well, this has now become a much more formal system where when I write a referral letter to the hospital and say, I'm worried about Mr. Smith, can you please replace his knee because it's worn out? What I might get is a letter back saying, well, can you first do this with Mr. Smith? Once you've done that, tell me the results, and then I might think about it. So each referral is now coming back with a list of jobs for us GPs to do before we can get the patient through to the hospital. Not only does that include delays for patients, but a massive workload for general practice. When you already can't get an appointment with us, we now have to slot these in extra.
Surely, before you refer, you would have a high index of clinical suspicion. You would then go through all the routine that you would normally go through, examination, any test that you can possibly do in your practice, and you only refer when you think it's right and the right, you know, apparent to do so.
Well, I'd like to think that most of the time that's entirely true. So your average GP goes above and beyond. They do everything they can, and they refer when it's time for the patient to get specialist input. What we're seeing now, however, and this isn't, I should point out, it's not to blame our specialist colleagues. This is a mandate that's come from NHS England and the government saying you now need to push this patient back to general practice to get them to do some of the specialist work first before you as a specialist can accept the patient. So I'm pretty certain my specialist colleagues are also very frustrated with this. And it is a push from hospital care to move that care out into the community. And a key point here is that 90% of patients are seen already in primary care with around 9 to 10% of the NHS budget. If you move 90% to 95% of the care by giving us this specialist care too, but none of the resources to care for patients, how is this ever possible? We just can't do it.
You can't do it, and the NHS is undergoing a major expansion of this assessment and guidance, and GP practices are contractually required to use that service. So is this about massaging the figures so that the tertiary care can say, well, we're actually seeing more patients, or at least the backlog isn't as big as it was, because essentially they haven't actually allowed anyone to come and see them?
Well, that's exactly right. So essentially what you're going to see is a little blip in the waiting list because the patient hasn't been accepted to be waiting for an appointment. They've been pushed back into general practice where they languish here with us while we try to do specialist tests that we don't necessarily understand, and the patient is therefore no longer counted on a specialist waiting list. It looks great. The government has reduced waiting lists, but actually it just means patients are suffering longer in primary care awaiting specialist input.
So reading this, the union's very unhappy, the Royal College of GPs unhappy about what it's doing to morale in general practice. What's the answer then? Is it to abolish this A&G system?
Well, advice and guidance has benefits. As I said earlier, back in the good old days, I would have phoned up my colleague and said, can I have a bit of help, please? So there is a need for a system where we talk to each other and say, can you give me some advice with this? But having it as a blanket policy of, well, this is how we're going to massage referrals by pushing everyone back is clearly inappropriate. When a patient needs help and the GP says the patient needs help, just get on and help. And again, I'm not criticising secondary care colleagues, many of whom are desperate to help patients, but this is a layer of bureaucracy that has been thrust upon us, and it's putting a barrier between primary care and secondary care, essentially for statistics.
I mean, I remember very vividly, if your GP referred to you in hospital, you would always be courteous because the GP obviously has experience and training and would only refer if they deem it to be necessary. That being said, the GPs were also contacting very junior doctors in A&E, and they had the audacity to basically throw it back to the GP, and that can't be right either.
No, absolutely. And I'm, you know, my heart goes out to patients here, because essentially what is happening is that we have now a hidden waiting list of patients who can't get into hospital. They're no longer counted. They're sat waiting in the community, desperate to see their GPs. And of course, we all know that you can't get an appointment to see us. And I apologise. I want to see you, but you can't get to see me because I'm busy. But now I'm even busier because I'm doing specialist work that nobody's given me the team or the resources to care for. I'm so sorry, patients. This is terrible.
So whose bright idea was all this? Is it the local trust or is this Department of Health? Who's to blame?
Now, this is a national invention. So this is happening all across England. This is essentially NHS England who has decided that it appears to be a good idea as a way of stopping willy-nilly getting through to hospital waiting lists and pushing
or
back
getting through to hospital.
Well, absolutely. I mean, let's be honest. All I would be doing otherwise would be sat on a golf course. So I may as well be seeing
You should
patients.
be so lucky. I mean, it just seems to me this just underlines everything I think about the NHS. Too much bureaucracy, too much management, too much middle management as well, and too many clipboards being held by people who really don't need to be there.
Mm-hmm. Or people, indeed, who won't listen to us. There's nothing wrong with coming up with an innovative idea. We all need them. The NHS is struggling. I'm very open to ideas. But when the workforce says back to you extraordinarily loudly, this isn't working for anybody. Hospital colleagues are saying this isn't working. General practice is saying this isn't working. Patients are frustrated.
Yeah.
And yet here we are, we continue with this system. So we are serving somebody else's master. And I'm afraid the master I think we're serving is waiting lists and finance.
I think you may be right. Let's talk about prostate cancer if we can. This is in the Telegraph today. Jeremy Clarkson has condemned the decision to strip men of the right to a prostate cancer test. Now, it has changed, hasn't it? Because until recently, if a man was concerned about their prostate health, they had the right to ask for this specific test called a PSA test, a prostate-specific antigen test. It's not a particularly good test, but you could ask for the right. That has been removed now very quietly. I didn't know that had happened, and now it is at the bequest of the general practitioner. Now, the Department of Health has said, well, it always has been, but that's not true. Should people be concerned like Jeremy Clarkson?
Actually, I have to be honest here. I'm interested to see the story in a bit more detail, because you can't remove a patient's right to request something. That's just not
well,
true.
I think the difference is the patient can still ask, the GP can refuse, but until recently, the GP couldn't refuse. That's the difference.
And I'm not sure that that's quite true either, because if a patient requests something of me and I don't think it's appropriate for the patient, I can always refuse. That hasn't changed. So we will only request a test for a patient where we think it's in the patient's interest. If a patient comes to me and they're 10 years of age, where clearly the prostate is not going to be big, and they don't have any symptoms with their waterworks and say, Dr. D, can you test my prostate, please? The answer is going to be no.
Of course.
There is absolutely no reason to do that. So that hasn't changed. We will test if a patient has a reasonable reason for us to want to test, and they come along saying, look, can I be tested, please?
I mean, I think... So, sorry, I was going to say, I also think there is a real worry here. Celebrities latching on to things like the PSA, thinking this is the be-all and end-all of testing, when you and I both know that actually it's not a great test in itself anyway, and it's not necessarily diagnostic of having prostate cancer.
That's right. The terrible reality here with prostate cancer is the tests that we have are just not good. And there is no better test yet coming through the system. So the blood test gives you a hint, it gives you a clue, and can only be taken in context with what the patient tells you about their symptoms, and then possibly an examination too. And even then, when you have that fuller picture, we can be very wrong. We can miss prostate cancer, or we can accidentally diagnose prostate cancer, do a bunch more nasty tests and then treatments, and then find out it never was prostate cancer and therefore cause you harm. And that's the problem. So this test might take you down a merry route that you really don't want to go down. So we need to think long and hard before doing a test that doesn't necessarily have a right outcome for a bunch of patients. So I like the idea that celebrities use their status to help the health of patients, but this is the wrong battle. Choose a different one, please.
I think you're right there, Dean. Really good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed for your time. That's Dr. Dean Eggett, who's the GP and CEO of Doncaster Local Medical Committee. Lots of messages are coming in. The welfare bill. This is Jan. I'm on PIP, but I'm not worried about the bill as I'm genuine. So this is reform's reform. The only people who need to worry are the ones that know they don't need it. David, PIP, I don't know too much about it, but if it's a one-off interview is going to be brought in, it maybe should be a board of 2 or 3, not a one-to-one. That would ensure a fairer decision for the long term, I reckon. That's Steve. Keep all of those messages coming in. This is Talk.
Not so small boat crisis, and there's a picture of the boat, and they've got a little little wording in a little circle that says picture continued on the back, and they've actually put it's so big they've put it across the front page and the back page of the newspaper. I mean, this is absolutely huge.
It is. By definition it is. And they're getting bigger all the time.
Getting bigger. What's
not really sure that you can call it a small boats crisis anymore.
It's a 49-foot dinghy.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. This is Talk. I'm asking, are Reform's welfare crackdowns going to be a vote loser or a vote winner? On the line, Sarah Pochin, Member of Parliament for Runcorn and Helsby. Good afternoon to you, Sarah.
Good afternoon.
So can you outline to us why you think this is a really good idea? I talked about PIP going, the health element of universal credit going. There would also be this new health security allowance. Also, companies with more than 5 employees would have to get some sort of health insurance. And crucially, foreign nationals would not be able to get this kind of benefit.
Yeah, look, at the end of the day, a social security system, a benefit system, is a contract between the state, the government, and the people. This contract has been broken now over the years, and people, our voters, are telling us that they feel the system is unfair. The whole point about what Reform want to do is to effectively reform the PIP system so that those that need it, those that genuinely need it, get it, but the rest of the people scamming the system do not get it. And that is what people feel is unfair.
I mean, it's quite interesting, actually, this. Even those people who have contacted us this afternoon in receipt of PIP or universal credit with a health benefit are actually broadly, I think this is fair to say, broadly in favour.
Because those genuine claimants will still get their PIP. They will still get the benefits that they deserve and need. Reform will always look after those vulnerable people in our society, whether that's vulnerability through disability or whatever their circumstances. Where people are genuine, then of course we will look after those people. What we are going to stop doing is all the scammers, all the people that are playing the system. How is it possible that we now have so many people that get more money by not going out to work than actually going out to work? That system is broken, and it is about time a government had the guts to fix this system. Yes, for some people, it's not going to be in their benefit, but those are the people that should be out there working. And some of the things I really like about this new policy are things like the long-term people on benefits will go out now and work in the community and contribute in that way. And if they don't want to do that, then their benefits get taken away. Why shouldn't that happen? Because I tell you, as 20 years as a magistrate, I always wanted, when we give community service out, for those people to go and clear the paths or cut the hedges or just contribute. It's so important. So I very much welcome that aspect. And I also very much welcome our policy of, if you are not British, if you are not a British citizen, you do not get benefits in this country.
I mean, that is obviously going to go down very well with Reform voters. Essentially, the ban would cover European Union citizens with settled status as well. Now, what that means is obviously there has to be a wholesale renegotiation of the Brexit deal. I was there at the beginning when we started all this, and of course it was a rubbish deal let down by Boris Johnson. Are you really ready for that fight?
Yes, 100%. Every new Prime Minister that comes in is absolutely well within their grounds to go and speak and renegotiate this European deal. They just haven't done it. So when Nigel Farage, hopefully, as our next Prime Minister, walks through the doors of Number 10, one of the first things he'll be doing is going to the EU and renegotiating the very bad deal that was done, as you say, by Boris. Look, the fact is that because we are so generous with our welfare system, we are seen as a welfare state for the world, then people come here in their droves and claim benefits. It's got to stop. If you are not a British citizen, you don't get any. Yes, that may have implications with respect to a deal that has been done with the EU. But look, bring it on. We can't go on like this. We cannot be a welfare state for the world.
I mean, I imagine there are people sitting in Spain and Greece and Italy thinking, crikey, hang on a minute, what about our reciprocation? So Britons living in the bloc could lose their rights to benefits. That will focus minds, shall I say. And also, it's quite interesting listening to people who are overseas saying, actually, it's very difficult to get benefits in France, in Italy, in Greece, in Spain, actually.
Exactly the point I was going to make. All this does is highlight just how easy it is to come to this country and claim benefit. It is not the same with our European neighbours. So I think that we will find that we are a lot better off if we enact this policy. But more than anything, it just makes sense, doesn't it? And as I said at the start, this is about restoring fairness to the British people, fairness to those people that go out and work every day, so that they feel that, quite rightly so, only those vulnerable people in society are actually getting that support that they need. And that will never change, whether it's veterans or children or disabled people, whoever's vulnerable. That will never change under a reform government. We are not disbanding PIP, we are reforming PIP.
I mean, I was quite surprised, and I had no prior knowledge of this, that Reform had gone out to the wicket with this kind of policy so far out from an election, because trying to reform benefits has been one of those kind of things that's very difficult to do. Labour tried it, even modest reforms, and that got voted down by the backbenchers. The Tories are now talking about reforming benefits. Now Reform's talking about reforming benefits. Is there any... can you see any sort of situation where Reform and the Conservatives come together to realise that the right need to unite to ensure that things like benefit reform actually happens?
But look, the Conservatives had 14 years and they've just let the situation get ridiculous. I mean, we are now in a situation where our prisoners get benefits, where, Muslim men with multi-wives can claim benefits for all of their wives and all of their children. It's not even legal in this country to have more than one wife, and yet we're paying benefits out to people like that. So whichever way you turn, you've got the Home Office allowing asylum seekers who've had their claims granted to bring in, 10, 20, 30 family members, all claiming benefits. It's absolutely got to stop. And under the Conservative government, they let it get this bad. So why would the British people have any faith whatsoever in the Conservative government fixing this? They created this and Labour have just made it worse.
So is your policy a vote winner or a vote loser?
It's an absolute vote winner amongst the hard-working, tax-paying people of this country that are absolutely fed up with the unfairness of the system.
Sarah, always good to talk to you. I think you did a charity walk this morning as well, so thank you very much indeed for coming on the show. That's Sarah Pochin, MP, Reform UK for Runcorn and Helsby. David, what I would do with all the unemployed youth is bring back national service. Here we go again. I've had this conversation so many times. I think we're in a position now as a country where we need people to be trained in discipline for what's eventually coming around the corner. Now, I've spoken to loads of armed forces personnel about that, and they are very worried about bringing back national service. We should actually talk about that another time. Sean's on the line from Poole. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. How are you this afternoon?
I'm all right, thank you very much indeed. I assume you want to talk about reform's reform.
I do indeed. I think most of the idea is absolutely fine, and on the face of it, I love the idea of putting long-term unemployed out to work.
I mean, it made me spill my coffee.
Yeah, I mean, it will never work.
Why?
Because you'll get a union member involved saying those people are now working. You can't pay them less than the average basic minimum wage, which for doing 20 hours a week work would be £254.
Oh, you've done the maths.
Done the maths.
So it doesn't work?
Well, no, because they'll be actually being paid £9.56 an hour.
Oh, well done. But unless you pass an exemption.
So I can't hear you.
Unless you pass an exemption, so you say, because you're in receipt of benefits, you don't qualify for minimum wage.
You think the unions will let that fly?
Well,
or some human rights lawyers?
Well, yeah, OK, you've got some good points there. But what did you think about the major thrust of it, or at least the sort of direction of travel?
Having got friends that I know, who are scamming the system left, right and centre, then yes, I know. I think it's a bloody good idea.
Right. I also know people who are scamming the system. Do you think it will weed them out?
Probably, or they're cleverer than I am.
Right. That's very interesting. So what do you think is the right way to do this?
I think that the face-to-face interviews, the reassessing people, all of that type of thing is an excellent idea.
Yeah.
There's always going to be somebody on the left who is going to find a reason how to stop it or how to put the spanner in the works.
Yeah. I mean, it'd be absolutely fascinating to see how that goes, but also only one assessment.
I think it's got to be an ongoing assessment.
OK, and how would you reinforce that?
It's just got to be done on, basically, you will be reassessed every 6 months, every 12 months.
Whoa, every 6 months? A lot of staff needed for that.
Not necessarily. It can be the same member of staff assigned to a number of cases.
And what do you think this policy will do in terms of drop-off?
How do you explain drop-off?
Well, just in terms of the number of people who decide that actually they can't keep committing to this and actually getting benefits.
I think it'll be a lot of people who'll think, Christ, I need to get a job before I get found out.
I think you may be right. Sean, really good to talk to you this afternoon. That's Sean in Poole. Right, we have to go to a break. I'm going to be talking after the break about Angela Rayner, who wants to build on the Greenbelt. Yes, shock, horror, she wants to build on the Greenbelt. Well, loosening of planning rules in England to allow more new homes near stations. That's next.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, a very good afternoon to you. Just after 3 o'clock on Monday, August the 17th. I'm David Bull, in for Ian Collins all this week and last week, of course. And thank you very much indeed for your company. Let's have a look at the headlines making the news this hour. Reform UK has vowed to force long-term welfare claimants into 20 hours a week of community work, with Robert Jenrick unveiling alarm clock Britain plans targeting anyone out of work for over 12 months. Britain's new £400 million super prison, HMP Millsike, has almost 350 cells sitting empty because it cannot recruit enough staff. That's despite chronic overcrowding elsewhere in the system. And cancer patients are facing delayed treatment after GPs revealed over a quarter of their referrals were rejected, including some flagged for red flag cancer symptoms. Those are the headlines this hour. Well, a very good afternoon to you. Thank you very much indeed for your company. I want to move on now and talk about homes. Do you remember that the government, and indeed the party before that was in government, pledged to build 1.5 million homes every single, over the 5-year period, which is 300,000 homes every single year. And all governments have failed to achieve that target. Well, thousands more homes, and this is according, this is The Guardian, thousands more homes could be built within 10 minutes of transport hubs, including on, wait for this, Greenbelt sites, under a loosening of planning policy announced by Angela Rayner today. Now, Angela Rayner, the Housing Secretary, will set out changes to national planning guidance for England that will include an order for councils to have a default yes approach to housing developments that are within a reasonable, that's the whole key word here, reasonable walking distance of well-connected train and tram stations. Now, if a proposed development is on Greenbelt land, then the government's golden rules state that they must have higher levels of affordable housing, new or improved green spaces, and be supported by the right infrastructure. Just very quickly, the approach was put out to consultation by Steve Reed. He was the predecessor to Angela Rayner. The guidance will be confirmed as part of this new national planning policy framework this week, and Rayner is billing the changes as part of the biggest rewrite of planning rules in more than a decade as the government moves towards trying to achieve this 1.5 million homes that they have to build. Now, joining me now is Viggo Turling, who's a research associate at the Adam Smith Institute. Good afternoon to you, Viggo.
Good afternoon, David. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, pleasure, absolute pleasure. Now, what do you make of this? So Angela Rayner, I wonder where she'd gone, actually. So she's appeared. She's suddenly saying, well, we need to build more homes. Interestingly, actually, the target, 1.5 million. I think they've only managed 375,000 of those 1.5 million. It's pretty awful. I have seen a lot of new houses being built. Is this the answer, the thing that Angela Rayner's come out with?
Look, David, in principle, this is good policy. In fact, it's one that my organisation, the Adam Smith Institute, has been advocating for close to a decade now, to build more homes near transport hubs. And let's be frank, we need more homes because, as was just reported, we just hit a record low for the number of planning permissions in the first quarter of this year. But I want to stress something to your viewers, David, and you mentioned it. One of the golden rules that the government has for these plans is affordable housing thresholds. Yeah. And some of these thresholds will reach about 50% per development. And as we revealed in one of our papers earlier this year, Affordable Abundance, affordable housing thresholds don't mean more affordable homes get built. They mean no homes get built. So if the MHCLG thinks they're going to build any homes on Greenbelt land with the type of thresholds or golden rules that have been advertised, then I'm afraid they're in some serious delirium.
Can you just explain that further? Why not? Why does it mean no homes being built?
Because what affordable housing, so just to explain, what an affordable housing threshold is that when a developer submits a planning application for a development for, say, 60 homes, a local authority, or in this case, the government, can mandate that, say, 20 or even up to 50% of those homes have to be affordable.
Yeah.
Now, what that means is that those affordable homes can slow down a development, increasing the cost of that development. They act as an implicit tax on that house building. And most importantly, it's counter-cyclical, which means, in layman's terms, when the market collapses, no homes get built, because you cannot force a developer to build an affordable home when the developer's not developing. So essentially, this policy is advocating for green belt development, but it will mean no green belt development.
So essentially what you're saying is actually to have that level of percentage, that high percentage, is counterintuitive. What they need to do is to reduce that percentage.
Exactly, or have no percentage at all. As we've shown in our research, you don't need affordable housing thresholds to build affordable homes. You can have different structures, you can get them built through grants, for example, but to advocate that developers need to build 50% of their homes in their developments, or need to mandate that 50% of them are affordable, is simply nonsensical, and it won't work.
So why do they do it then?
They do it because it was theorized in the late 1990s, when the Town and Country Planning Act was first, 1990 was passed, that a great way to get affordable homes built is just to simply force the developers to pay for them. And that worked for a little while, but what they saw, especially in the financial crash in subsequent years, is that when the market fails, so do affordable housing thresholds. And without reading too much into this, David, you could almost see this as a policy proposal to satisfy the YIMBYs, the yes in my backyard people, who want greenbelt homes built, but to introduce a policy that in the long term just simply won't work. So the government can say, look, we gave you what you wanted, but in the end, it just didn't work out.
I mean, you said in general this is quite good, or at least a move in the right direction. There are things in here I rather liked. Pubs will get protection from being turned into housing or offices, with developers having to prove there is no reasonable prospect of keeping a pub as a going concern. That's something I'm very in favour of. We're losing far too many pubs in this country. But also, just in terms of what they're trying to do, building, as you say, near transport hubs seems to be the right thing to do, rather than building de novo in the middle of nowhere, where there are no utilities, no services, no GP, no pharmacist, no shops, no nothing.
Absolutely. Look, if you're going to build in metropolitan areas, it makes complete sense to build near transport hubs. If you shorten people's commute times, then you make it easier for them to get to work, and hopefully you boost productivity in general. But like I said, it will make no meaningful difference to anyone if we build these homes with the types of thresholds that have been advertised, because I can promise you, David, it will just mean in the long term that they won't be built.
So what do you advise government to do instead?
My advice to government would be, if we should absolutely build on greenbelt land. Absolutely. And
I can hear howls of dissent from around the country, but we'll come back to that.
No. The NIMBYs are probably shouting at me right now.
They are.
But it is slowly, the Overton window is shifting towards this idea that we do need to maximise more of the abundant area of undeveloped land that we have on the greenbelt. Sadiq Khan's draft London plan, which is essentially a 200-page policy document that lays out development strategy in London for the next 2 decades, has advocated for 55,000 homes to be built on the greenbelt. So the Overton window is slowly shifting in what I would say the right direction. But the issue remains that we have these horrible little thresholds that will just mean that no homes will be built. So, as I said to you earlier, there are loads of different ways that you can get around this. A flat grant structure, as we proposed April this year, would lead to far more homes being built than is currently advertised.
So the green belt, and I paused before I said it because I could hear the outcry from here around the country. The green belt designation around the urban areas was introduced in London and the home counties in 1938. Now, green belt land covers 13% of the UK's total land area, whilst urban development accounts for just 10%. Now, the whole thing is that the green belt is actually slightly a misnomer, isn't it? It sounds green and lush and full of forests and skipping animals. That's not true.
No, it's not. It's not. Exactly. You're entirely right, David. You say that we have this wonderful green belt around London, but it's actually just a bunch of undeveloped green and brownfield sites that need that don't necessarily contribute to a functioning or beautiful ecosystem, as some people may think they do. They are just sat there ready to have housing or other things built on them.
And just in terms of that, when I drive from Suffolk through to, say, here, I go through swathes of East London inside the M25, undeveloped. I would have thought ripe for development because they sit on transport links and it is in an urban area.
Precisely, but because they have this designation as the green belts, they're essentially blacklisted from any development, and that's why I initially started this segment by saying this is a good policy in principle. It's good that government is talking about developing on the green belts. That's the first step in the right direction, because it's been, as you sort of alluded to, a bit of a taboo thing to talk about. But we just need to take that further step, which is build on the green belts, but also make sure the things actually get built.
Do you think it would help, actually, in terms of sort of the public's conscience, to reclassify Greenbelt into sub-classifications? So, for example, we talk about the grey belt. Now, I don't think many people would object to building on the grey belt, but what they don't want is it stuck in a field opposite them in the middle of rural Suffolk.
Yeah, exactly. I think the term greenbelt is unhelpful. It creates an emotional reaction to development that isn't necessarily good for the development for the country. If we can talk about reclassification, but really where the issue lies is the planning policy, and we'll have to look more into the MPPF and what it says. But this is a good step in the right direction.
And, of course, I want young people to be able to own their homes, as I managed to do about 150,000 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in London, the ratio of income to house prices is about 12 times. And that is completely unsustainable. Young people these days don't buy homes. They rent.
Really good to talk to you. Thank you ever so much for your time. That's Viggo Turling, who's a research associate at the Adam Smith Institute. What do you think, building on the green belt? Should we reclassify it as grey belt? Clearly, we need to build homes, but no one wants new homes built near them. Get in touch, please. 0344 499 1000. You can text the word talk in your message to 87222. You can message us on X as well. George is on the line from Dundee. Good afternoon.
Hi, David. How are you doing?
Yeah, good, thanks very much indeed. What do you want to talk about?
9 little words that every party says when they go after people on PIP. Those that don't...
Oh, you're breaking up slightly.
You hear me?
I'm not really. We'll call you back. Let me just do some messages whilst we do that. Hi, David. We're overpopulated. We need fewer people, not concrete over our lungs. That's Anne in Archway. Interesting. Because, of course, actually, I think the population is declining and we don't have enough young people in work to support older people who are in receipt of state benefits. So I'm not sure that's entirely true. Hi, David. This is Kathy in West Lancashire. Good afternoon to you. Lovely to see you back on our screens again. That's very kind. Regarding reform's crackdown on benefits, I'd just like to add another perspective. My daughter was medically retired from her profession, which she loved, as a result of constant NHS failure to ignore the symptoms of endometriosis for 7 years and to constantly misdiagnose her. If she were to receive the appropriate treatment for the several health conditions she now suffers from, she would love to get back to work. However, with the ongoing health problems she has and the new employment laws, no employer would touch her with a barge pole. Catch-22. Love the show as always. Kathy, thank you very much indeed. Brilliant message. Let's go back to George in Dundee. Good afternoon again. Let's try again.
Hi, David. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
I'm not in the best signal area.
Right, you're standing on a chair now. Right, tell us your thoughts.
Right, every party that goes after PIP says these magic words. Those that will still need help will receive help.
Yeah.
Basically, I do not believe them. There will be thousands that fall through the net that need help. And every party that's tried so far, Conservatives, we Liberals, Labour, thousands fall through the net, And it's the people that do not have anybody speak that are most likely to fall through the net and get back up.
So what you're saying is that pushy people will succeed and those that are on their own that maybe may not be able to make the case. I mean,
there's two things a political party has to do, David, right? And this is speaking for somebody whose wife receives the equivalent of PIP in Scotland. Instead of, can you lift your hand 6 inches above your head? Can you do this? Can you do that? It should be certain illnesses qualify, certain conditions qualify. If you're going to have a PIP system, and there's no point scoring or anything like this. If you're blind, you get it. If you're an amputee, you get it. If you're motor neuron disease, you get it. And that takes away all the ambiguity of it. The second thing any political party has got to do, and which Reform is going to do, but they should do this first, is knock off every foreign national.
Which is their policy? Let's just go back to your incapacity. So you want to have specific diagnoses included, which I do think is part of what you have currently. Excuse me. But also you need to look at the level of incapacity, because you may well have a diagnosis, but you're capable of working. If you're still there, let me just throw that back to you. What about this idea you have one single assessment instead of chasing multiple avenues that you have to apply to?
Yeah, one single assessment. My wife was awarded it for life. She got a lifetime award 25 years ago. They took that off her 15 years ago.
Wow.
And everybody who had a lifetime award got that taken off them from the Tory party.
Right. So, So just in terms of what you heard from Reform, are you broadly in favour, which I get from the foreign nationals not qualifying, or are you wary, or are you broadly against?
Incredibly wary, incredibly sceptical that they've got the manpower to do this and the know-how to do this.
I think that's a very good point, the manpower. How on earth do you assess all these people? That's a very good point.
Correct. It should be on... If that's him. They get it. If somebody's blind, they get it.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be, can you touch your toes on a Tuesday? Can you lift your elbow above your head on a Wednesday? That's not...
And also, it seems how you answer that question then predicates whether you are actually able to get that benefit, and that can't be right at all. As I said, people selling these courses for 50 quid to help you fill in the form, that can't be right either. George, really good to talk to you. Very good to talk to you, George. It's George in Dundee. I'm going to go to Sean in Coventry, but I'll do it after this break. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. This is Talk. Let's get Sean on the line from Coventry. Good afternoon, Sean.
Hello, how are we doing?
Yeah, good, thanks very much indeed. Your thoughts?
About this building on Greenbelt.
Yeah.
Now, for the last 30 years, I've been a clerk of works, which basically involves me going around inspecting all the new developments that are being built for various councils.
Very good.
So I've done that for 30-odd years. From my take on it, developers want to build on Greenbelt simply because they can market their properties for much more money. They can sell their houses for a lot
When
more
you're
money
talking about
building on
Greenbelt, you're differentiating the sort of green and pleasant land as opposed to the grey belt that we talked about.
Well, you've got grey belt, brown belt, green belt. Generally, your brown belt, your grey belt, it's within cities where there's been an old development that's been knocked down. Now, that takes a lot more work because you never know what you're going to find under there.
Oh, good point.
But if you build a development on a green belt, like a field or a bit of wasteland that's never had a building on it, then the likelihood of you finding anything surprising has been massively reduced, which has reduced your costs.
Got ya. So what do you think... Sorry, carry on.
And I've got developments that I'm looking at the moment, and the build cost for each unit can range from, say, 100 to 160,000.
Right.
And they're marketing these properties at 850,000.
Whoa! And how many units on a development?
There's probably about 50 on this one.
That's a lot of money.
Most developers, I've recently had a development, their build, this was for a social housing, their build cost, and this is including the land and all the infrastructure like the road and new sewers and everything else, their build cost, they told me, was about 68,000.
Right.
Now, they could easily have marketed those properties for, say, 450, 500.
And why is the build cost so much cheaper?
What,
on the social housing? Lower spec materials or just different design?
It's lower spec material, but it's kind of a better spec build. And what I mean by that is that on social housing, the houses themselves are very regularly inspected. The work.
Yeah.
But on a private development or one that's
sorry, regularly inspected during the build, are you talking about?
During the build, yes. Yeah. So it cuts down costs because there's less waste. The guys do the job first, do it right, do it first, do it right. But and the materials are perhaps not such a higher spec.
Yes.
But when probably I know one of your callers was talking about a percentage of affordable houses. It used to be about 25%.
It did, yeah.
But now it's gone right down to about 7.5%.
And why is that?
It's because developers want to make money.
I get that. But if they're mandated by central government, then surely that's a good thing, although Vigo was arguing to the contrary.
No, in my view, the best thing the government could do is put a profit cap on each unit.
OK. Both social but also the houses for profit, or just the social housing?
Well, everything. Because...
but that would then amount to state control.
Well...
And it wouldn't be free market.
Well, the thing is, if they want if they want more houses, they've got to encourage the developers to build more houses. Yeah. And if they've got a profit cap, I mean, because building a house for 250 grand and then selling it for 850.
Yeah, that can't be right.
Yeah, that's ridiculous, and that's happening all over the country.
So would you advocate then a multiple of the build cost?
Sorry?
So would you advocate the profit being a multiple of the build cost? So 3 times, say?
Well, much they can sell it for. So if you're building a property, all right, you can make 100% markup on it.
Yeah.
That still doesn't add up to 850.
No, it doesn't. What about 3 times?
Nah.
Too high.
Yeah, I'd say 100%.
Okay,
100%.
so let me just ask you then, what about Angela Rayner saying the presumption will be in favour of any development near a commuter hub or train station?
Yeah, she's just talking about it. To be honest.
Right, OK, thanks, Sean. Great, really, really interesting. Veronica's on the line from Surrey. Good afternoon, Veronica.
Hello, David. I'm phoning up about the reforms.
Yes,
ideas
yes, about benefit reform.
Benefit reforms. I mean, forgive me if I'm wrong, but I thought it was Labour that brought in about benefits many years ago. And I thought the reason they brought it in was to help people who were in between employment.
That's right.
Wasn't it for 6 months? They got help while they were looking for new employment because they'd been made redundant or something like that. Why can't we go back to things like that? Maybe now for a year, to give them a year to find jobs.
Well, of course, we're also talking about disability, incapacity benefit, people who are too sick to work as well.
I know, but as a caring nation, which I hope we are,
yeah,
we would always take that into account.
So what do you make of reforms? Are they too draconian, or do you think they're roughly right? Are they a vote winner?
They're roughly right, and I tell you also why. My father and late father-in-law came over to this country just after the war. And when he came, he wasn't greeted with a nice hotel room or 3 meals a day or hospitals or anything like that. He had to pay for everything himself, including any medical help that he needed or anything like that. I believe he had to work for about 5 years. I don't know whether it's like 10. I've got all the details up in my loft. But he had to work and pay full taxes and everything until he was eligible for anything.
Yeah.
So shouldn't that also be applied to people coming over here now?
Well, that's what I think some political parties are trying to do, like the abolition of indefinite leave to remain, to ensure... Even Labour is trying to tighten that criteria as well.
Yeah. I mean, because I'm not being funny, but something has to be done because we certainly can't go on.
Well, I mean, that's the most interesting... So I think you're right. That's the most interesting thing for me. So 333 billion at the moment, forecast to rise to, what, 450 billion in the next few years. And yet I heard people phoning in absolutely condemning this policy because they were worried about their own personal situation. Now, one might argue if you are truly in need of those benefits, then you will still continue to get them.
Of course, as I said, as a caring nation who likes to look after our sick and everything, of course we would look after them. They would have nothing to fear. The only people that have anything to fear are people that could work but don't want to work.
Veronica, really good to talk to you. Thank you for your call this afternoon. That's Veronica in Surrey. Hi, David. Great show. This is Dean in Devon. Good afternoon to you, Dean. 2 things. Firstly, on prisons, send all foreign prisoners who are in prison back to their country or a nominated country. And secondly, bring back the death penalty. We talked about this the other day. For murderers, rapists and paedophiles and cop killers, that should free up thousands of cell spaces. My other point on PIP, if you need it through a physical disability, then you should get it. Or if you have a mental illness, and I don't mean anxiety or depression either. Thanks, David. Keep up the good work. Dean, thank you very much for getting in touch. Thomas in Northants says, why don't they just build flats instead of houses? You get a lot of flats in the same space as a few houses. Betty, good afternoon to you. David, all callers and receivers think they deserve it. So the only fair way is to reassess all 12 million or issue an amnesty. If you give it up, no charges. If caught cheating, then deportation to a third country. Betty, you should be in charge. Then this is Anne. David, I strongly support not sending winter fuel payment, child support or other benefits overseas. I think many people are in your court as well with that. David, this is David. Good afternoon, David. Great to see you back on Talk. Thank you very much. Interesting point you made with your last caller on benefit scammers. Do you think it should be a moral duty or, if not a legal duty, to report... Oh, this is good. Should it be moral duty or legal duty to report known scammers so that they can be stopped fleecing the taxpayer? Your thoughts, please. 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222, and you can message us on X as well. After the break, we've got some juicy, lighter stories for you. I'm going to be joined by Leo Kearse, who's a comedian and broadcaster. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. 3:30. 3:30. I'm joined by Leo Kearse, comedian and broadcaster. Good afternoon to you.
Hi, David. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. I thought I would ask you on so that we could go through some of the stories I saw this morning that made my eyes pop open. Now, shall we do the first one? This is a bunch of nutters. A growing number of people, you won't believe this, a growing number of people chasing the perfect shot. All these influencers, right? So they have to take the perfect picture. So they're now chasing the perfect shot of a shark, because you would, wouldn't you? They're being attacked and left with severe injuries after getting too close. Honestly, a rise in social media videos showing people swimming close to sharks, touching or even riding a shark has left experts concerned. I would think so, for their mental health. At least 3 influencers have been bitten by the animals in less than a year, including a fishing influencer who almost lost a leg after being attacked by a reef shark while spearfishing in July. Now, this is researchers at the International Shark Attack File. Tracks human-shark interactions worldwide, has seen a rise in the past 3 years of people being bitten whilst trying to take footage with a shark. Why would you take footage with a shark?
I know, and we always used to hear about unprovoked shark attacks, and I used to think, like, who's provoking? Like, surely they're all unprovoked. Nobody's getting in the water and picking a fight with the sharks. Well, it turns out there actually are people getting in the water and going and harassing the sharks. They're hanging off them. They're going into, you know, swimming into their path to take the photo. We've seen, you know, this urge to get the perfect selfie cause death so many times on cliff edges, in front of trains. You know, people will really risk their lives to get an edgy shot, and now they're doing it with sharks. And, you know, not to denigrate women, but this does seem to be a lot of women. Women don't seem to understand the dangers of animals. Remember, there was that meme a few months ago about women would rather be alone in the woods with a bear than a man. Now it seems that they'd rather be alone on the reef with a shark, and we can see how that's playing out. We've seen some women there with horrific injuries. An influencer was bitten on the thigh, and to be honest, you know, she looked pretty tasty in the water. I can't blame the shark for having a go. But people need to understand. I do a lot of scuba diving, or I used to before I had a family. I've done hundreds and hundreds of dives. I've dived on wrecks. I've dived all around the world on the Barrier Reef. I've dived with sharks. You've really got to respect the wildlife, because if you don't respect the wildlife, it's not just potentially bad for you. There's things in the ocean that can really hurt you. Not just sharks. There's triggerfish. There's all kinds of things that can hurt you. But also it hurts the sharks.
Yeah.
It hurts the wildlife. They're getting stressed. They're, you know, having their natural pattern disrupted.
I was just reading these examples. Last year, a tourist in the Caribbean had both hands bitten off whilst trying to photograph a bull shark. Then some other person, 2 months later, a snorkeler in Israel was carrying a selfie stick and was killed by sharks. And then Tayane Dalazen, who's a 37-year-old Brazilian lawyer and social media personality who really should know better, was on a shark diving trip on the Brazilian coast in April when she was bitten by a 7-foot-long nurse shark. It clamped its jaw around her thigh, held her down for several seconds and released her, allowing her to escape but leaving her with lacerations on her leg. Have these people lost all sense of control, of intellectual rigour?
Yeah, it seems like it. I mean, I shouldn't laugh. People are dying. People are losing their hands. Turns out that sharks practice. Yeah, both hands. That's Sharia law. So, or maybe Sharkia law. So yeah, don't mess with wild animals. You wouldn't see these people on land, you know, jumping into the tiger enclosure at the zoo or the polar bear enclosure. You know, that would seem like an incredibly risky thing to do. So why they do it in the water, which is already riskier, because you know if an animal holds you down under the water, you're going to run out of oxygen pretty quickly. Why they do it in the water? Why they do it around sharks? I have no idea.
I mean, honestly, the psychology of these people who want the perfect selfie to be an influencer or a social media personality, I have literally no idea. But my timeline on social media is full of these idiots.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and I think it's something that's gonna get worse before it gets better, because I think more people are coming online, so we're seeing people from parts of the world where the culture, because I think in Britain we've got more of a culture of respecting wildlife and keeping a distance, but I've certainly seen walking through Richmond Park, I've seen people from other countries or other cultures try and lie down with the deer in the park, try and get too close to get the selfie. So as more people come online from different cultures, I think we're going to see more people going out and getting too close to these animals. And also maybe the sharks are getting hungrier. Maybe it's going to be like tigers. Once they've got a taste of one influencer, they're gonna want more.
Well, I mean, they're just total idiots, aren't they? We talked earlier, actually. I was talking to Vanessa Frake about prisons and health and safety. Well, talk about this for health and safety. It's been hot recently, hasn't it? Ice cream vans. We love the noise of an ice cream van coming along and selling their wares. Now, for one resident of Torry Fale, a community south of the Rhondda Valley in Wales, Mark Edwards had his ice cream van and he was trundling along in Rhondda. And in fact, this resident, it was too much for them. A missive was dispatched to Rhondda Sign-on Taff Council, who complained about the Mr. Whippy jingle from the ice cream van, who complained about the discordant jingles. And he said it was far too late and it was 8 o'clock in the evening. Wait for this. Mark Edwards, who was driving the ice cream van, discovered the ruling this week. He got a letter from the council on his windscreen. If he chimed after 7 o'clock, he would face a fine. I mean, have we lost our sense of humour collectively?
Yeah, and surely there are bigger problems in Britain.
One would think so.
The jingle of ice cream vans. I mean, we're about 2 years away from the call to prayer coming out of the ice cream vans. That'll give people something to worry about. Then it'll really be a Mr. Whippy if you've broken any of the Sharia law. But I mean, this person. Maybe they've got kids. Because every time the ice cream van comes into our street and plays its little song, my kids are like, my daughter's like, "Can we get an ice cream?" And I say, "No, the song actually means they've run out of ice cream."
Yes, I've heard that before.
And it works. She's 27. It still works. But I mean, to be complaining about something like that, and then for the councils to actually take action over a complaint over the beautiful, harmonious sound, the traditional British sound of the ice cream lorry. I mean, come on.
And also, we'll miss it when they go, and they will go in time, like everything else is going, like pubs, for example. I mean, next council's going to ban church bells, for example.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something that's really sad. I think was it Richard Dawkins got into a lot of bother a few years ago by saying he preferred the sound of the the English church bells to the sound of the call to prayer. But the sound of English church bells genuinely is, or Scottish, or Welsh, or Northern Irish, genuinely is genuinely is a beautiful sound, and I think it's it brings a community together.
I would agree. I was sitting at home actually, and we have a church in my village, which often the bells don't ring very often, and I heard the church bells and I thought, what an uplifting sound that is. It was just wonderful actually, and we lose that stuff at our peril. Talking of hideous sounds though, which I don't include the ice cream van in, but did you get that blinking government alert on your phone the other day?
Yes, I did, and it's interesting how you get mission creep with these this type of things. They brought through these universal alerts that are for a major disaster, a terror attack, something like that. And within a few months, it's being used to warn us about not having a disposable barbecue. And I'm pretty sure this is like when Prevent was set up. It was set up to prevent serious terrorism. We had these horrific terror attacks, and Prevent was set up, and now only 8% of Prevent referrals are about Islamic terrorism. The rest of them are about mostly British men who voted for Brexit or read a Douglas Murray book or enjoy Lord of the Rings or something like that. It's something so far down the scale of radicalization, it's nonsensical. And we're seeing that with everything. When I worked in the police, I remember the regulation of Investigatory Powers Act came through, and it was supposed to be dealing with the very worst criminals, the organized crime, drug traffickers, terrorists, things like that. Within about 6 months, we were using it to catch fly tippers. So there's always, whatever the government brings through for an emergency act, it always drifts into becoming, you shouldn't have a barbecue.
Well, do you know what? I'd had a very long week. I'd done 6 programmes last week. I was driving home and this almighty shriek came from my car. I had no idea what it was. I swerved because I was trying to work out what on earth was happening to my car, and it was that blinking alert. And then when and it wasn't just me, I saw other motorists also swerving. I mean, I think it was more dangerous, that alert, than actually not lighting a barbecue.
Yeah, I did notice when it came through, it didn't come through. It came through on my phone, but it didn't come through on my wife's phone. I don't know if it's because
she's opted out.
Maybe she's opted out.
Yeah, but it's worse than that. I then got it again, second time, and a third time, and a fourth time.
Oh my God!
I know, I was very popular.
Have you been having a lot of barbecues?
I mean, like, you really must stop having barbecues. I'm always at talk. There's no way I'm having a barbecue. I mean, talk about mission creep and the government overreacting. I mean, honestly, when I read it as well, and then, of course, every driver tried to see what on earth was going on. Is it nuclear war? Is there plague and whatever, some sort of contamination? No, you can't have a barbecue.
Yeah, and that is genuinely dangerous. If you've got a simultaneous event that causes all drivers to look at their phones, because I know we're not supposed to look at our phones.
We're not meant to, but we did.
But if it's an emergency alert, of course you're going to look at your. You might only have 10 seconds to live, so yes. Of course you're going to look at your phone. For everybody on a motorway to suddenly look at their phones in tandem, I mean, that's a recipe for disaster.
It really is. Honestly, you can't make it up, honestly. Leo, really good to talk to you. That's Leo Kearse, their comedian and broadcaster. Let's take a call. Nigel is on the line from London. Good afternoon.
David, good afternoon to you. I wanted to say something really simple, is that I'm fortunate enough to also live in the US in a place called Las Vegas, which is pretty hot this time.
I know that place quite well, yep.
Good. And, of course, we don't have a barbecue ban there, which is, when it's 115 Fahrenheit.
Well, I guess you're in the desert.
Yeah, but you've still got scrubland, you've still got trees, you've still got, where we live, greenery. But the point is, it's common sense. And idiots who take disposable barbecues on heathland are just completely stupid.
Well, also I think it also transpired there were a lot of kids setting fire to scrubland thinking it was funny. It's not funny.
No, arson is a very serious offence, and people who are caught setting fire to scrubland or anything at all should be dealt with very, very heavily.
I agree totally. Anything else on your mind this afternoon, or was that it?
Well, next time we have a barbecue, we'll invite you over, David.
Yeah, do please, because I think I'm a serial barbecuer, apparently, according to the authorities. Thank you. Yes, I'm very partial to a barbecue, so yes, please do invite me. Thanks ever so much for your call as well, Nigel. I should have asked, apparently, this is according to Anne in Archway, asked Leo the best and funniest way to enter this country. I want to know the answer now. Can we find out from Leo? In the interim, let's have a break. After the break, it's your turn, your calls, thoughts and messages. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Oh, welcome back. Final part. This is Talk. David Bull in for Ian Collins. I was saying before the break, what a wonderful sound, I think, the village church with the bells resplendently ringing on an afternoon really is. I was sitting outside thinking, wow, this is just so lovely. And by the way, I used to be a campanologist. I used to ring bells before you asked what that is. Anyway, David, this is Steve saying church bells. Now, our church, David, is now just a tourist trap, so no bells in our village. We go to visit the Outlaws to hear the bells ringing loud and proud on a weekday evening practice. I absolutely love it. As you say, we will lose them by stealth and other reasons. Steve, thank you very much for that. Quintessentially English. Wait for this. Sean McKeever says, please ban church bells. Ridiculous idea. Absolutely not. Not happening on my watch. Mandy's on the line from North Wales. Good afternoon.
Hi.
Hi, right. I think you want to talk about welfare.
I do, yes.
Come on then.
I totally agree with Reform's policy. I think it's well overdue. It should have been done decades ago. I just think the whole system needs revamping.
And why do you think that?
Well, I'm not saying because I'm on benefit myself through disability, so I am on PIP. So I'm very aware of, you know, the system basically, and I find it has been too easy over the last, at least the last decade.
Oh,
definitely.
really? Tell us your experiences.
Well, basically, I mean, I've got multiple disabilities. And I'm not ashamed of any of them. It's all backed up through doctors. It's through health professionals. I'm waiting for 4 operations at the moment. And I mean, it is waiting because basically I'm in a queue. It's just constant with seeing anybody. I had a heart attack in February. So I'm under the heart failure team because I have acute heart failure.
Right, I'm sorry.
So I have, the fibromyalgia, the osteoarthritis, sleep apnea, which is a massive disability to me. I mean, it's a constant battle with myself. I'm
sorry. You were saying it's a constant battle.
It is a constant battle, and I only go out of the house when I'm feeling okay to go out. I'm never feeling 100%.
And can I just ask you, in terms of the current system, how easy was it to navigate that system?
At the beginning, it was hard.
Yeah.
It was hard to fight because fibromyalgia wasn't recognised then. I was one of the, from the early stages of being diagnosed fibromyalgia. So it was difficult at the beginning. As time's gone on, it's just been a phone call.
And we had a call
Just been a letter through the post saying your time has been extended, which is fine because I've got nothing. I don't need to hide anything.
Indeed, you have nothing to hide. So what do you make of our caller earlier who really pushed back enormously, sort of strongly, the pushback was extraordinary, basically saying he was very concerned that it would deprive him of his benefits, which he says, rightfully getting.
Is he worried?
He is worried.
He worried? Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Why is he worried? If he's got all your clinical evidence, which is irresputable, you can't say somebody hasn't got something if they've not seen the specialist, they've not got the MRIs and the everything else that you need to back up your claim. I don't see where anybody should be worried. And if you've got these disabilities, and a lot of them are hidden disabilities. I mean, I don't go out that, I haven't got one less leg for people to visually see what I've got.
Yeah.
But I'm not worried about it because I know the people who really need it are getting it, and those that don't need it, I mean, they go on about neurodiversity and things like that. I mean, autism runs in my family. My children, my grandchildren suffer with autism, ADHD. And I know the difficulties that brings as well, which is separate to a physical disability.
Yeah.
So, and I just think if you've got all your medical evidence and you've got all your clinicians, I don't see why somebody should worry.
It's a great point, Mandy. Thank you very much for your call. George is on the line from Horsham. Good afternoon.
Hello, David. Very good afternoon. Thanks for having me on.
Pleasure.
It's regarding these reform proposals.
Yeah, what do you think?
I fully back them 100%, and I will be voting for them. But for those people who say that, well, how are we going to do this, the costing and so on and so forth, well, I view it as quite simple, really. If you were to take one employee, one assessor, who may be doing 4 assessments a day, and this is only the paperwork assessment, I'm not talking about clinical assessments here, you pay them, say, 40 grand a year at 4 assessments a day, you're looking at about £50 per assessment, which is peanuts compared to the thousands that are going to be saved over the year. Okay,
millions.
They may need clinical assessments, to go and see a doctor. So let's say for a round ballpark figure, it's going to cost 1,000 quid to get a person properly assessed. That's nothing compared to what's going to be saved. And I know so many people who are milking the system.
Do you?
That is, oh, yeah.
How do they do it?
To be honest, I don't know. But what I do know is that they'll milk the system in working, 16 hours a week maximum. So they'll have a job which is cash in hand and so on and so forth. And really, the in-person assessments, as we all know, have virtually disappeared. So all you got to do is go online, find what you got to say, what you got to do, and that's it. You get paid. So high time they take people on to assess.
And just finally, if I may, I thought it was very punchy. I use that word quite deliberately. I thought it was a punchy policy way before any election. Certainly they don't have to do it. It is going to be a controversial policy. But do you think it's a vote winner or a vote loser?
Well, for me, it'd be a vote winner. I mean, anybody who's got half a brain knows that the system can't go on as it is, I don't want to pay for it.
Well, I think that's absolutely right, and I think most people are coming round to that idea. Thank you ever so much. Really good to talk to you, George. Hi, David. I think reform are totally right. This is Margaret in Edinburgh. Good afternoon to you. People must get working. I was unemployed for a little while, and as a married female, found it difficult to get employment, in my 60s. I can imagine how difficult that was. I got no help as my husband earned over £16,000. Another one, Angie. I'm on PIP, and I'm absolutely all for reforming the PIP process. I don't think the working for benefits will work. We had a similar thing in the early 90s where we got paid an extra £10 a week from the government to go and volunteer in a charity shop. Oh, so we're talking about this. The fact is that if you're long-term unemployed, you will face 20 hours of mandatory community sentence. So, service, sorry. If you were unemployed, she goes on to say, you could only earn £5 a week wages, and there were many cash-in-hand jobs available. The youngsters, this is the key point about all of this, actually. The youngsters don't want to get up and they don't want to do any work at all. Hi, David. Listening to Sarah Pochin on welfare, the only people who could possibly disagree with that are people who are targeted as not worthy of benefits. Unfortunately, though, David, there are a lot of them, and they will vote against reform. I work 60 hours a week, I truck drive, I sleep out on my lorry. I'm 61. I'm going to be doing this for at least 8 to 9 more years, I'm sure you are. I don't want to pay taxes so that people half my age can sit at home watching telly. Daryl, well said. That's Daryl in Lincoln. Let's take a call. Barry! Hello, Barry. You're in Norwich. Good afternoon.
Hello, David. How are you?
I'm all right. I nearly went into the accent then. Hello. What's on your mind this afternoon?
Yeah, don't do that. No one understands.
No, you don't want to do that. Carry on.
Yeah, I want to make a comment on this oil fields and gas fields.
Oh, yeah, Rosebank and Jackdaw.
Yeah, right. I want a Prime Minister, I don't care who it is, to go, right, I'm the leader of this party, I'm in charge, and this is what we're going to do. Because a lot of the country is skint. They can't afford these fuel bills that are getting hiked up all the time. They're going up again in October and probably again in January. We've got the highest gas and electric bills in Europe.
We have.
And it's just unsustainable. All these people who want this net zero, all these MPs, have probably never paid a gas and electric bill in their lives.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair point. Also, the thing I hate is this political posturing and testing this policy, sort of waving it in the wind. You know, either as Prime Minister you think this is a great idea or you don't. Make a decision. Don't ask the public.